The morning Nora Bell told her children the will was delayed, they had already been calling for 23 days straight. At 8:12, the attorney phoned and explained that the equipment loan, inventory valuation, and probate schedule had pushed everything back. Nora wrote the new information on the grocery pad beside 3 items Ray would never eat again: coffee, raisin bread, liverwurst. At 8:31, she called Melissa. "So, there's no meeting today?" Melissa asked. "No meeting today. And they gave you no date?" "Not one I'd trust." A pause opened between them. "Well," Melissa said, "keep me posted." Eric sounded annoyed on Nora's behalf, or possibly his own. Paige said, "Maybe it's a blessing. We can all breathe." That afternoon, nobody called. Nobody called the next morning either. By Friday, Nora understood that the strangest part of losing her husband would not be the empty side of the bed or the single coffee cup in the sink. It would be wondering how 3 people could need to hear her voice every day, then suddenly not need it at all. 3 weeks earlier, Ray Bell had died among the petunias. He had complained at breakfast that the greenhouse thermostat was lying to him. Ray distrusted any machine that knew more than he did, which included thermostats, blood pressure cuffs, and Nora's phone. "It says 68 in there," he'd told her, pushing away the heel of his toast. "Feels like Miami with a fever." "You're wearing flannel. It's March. You wear flannel in August. That's ceremonial." Those were the last ordinary words between them, though Nora would spend nights trying to improve them. She would lie on her back and invent a version in which she took his hand across the kitchen table and said something worthy of being remembered. "Thank you for 37 years. I knew you before your beard went white. I loved you even when you stored oily bolts in my good cereal bowls." Instead, she had carried her coffee to the office while Ray went to inspect the heater. Tasha found him 40 minutes later, collapsed beside a rolling rack of purple petunias. By the time Nora reached the greenhouse, Luis was kneeling beside him with both hands locked over Ray's chest. Tasha stood near the door, talking to the emergency dispatcher in a voice so calm it sounded borrowed. Nora remembered absurd things. One of Ray's work boots had come untied. The mister clicked on while the paramedics were working. Water purled across the plastic sleeves of the petunias, making them look freshly polished for sale. Someone moved Nora outside. Someone put Ray's cap in her hands. The next clear image was Melissa striding through the hospital entrance in camel-colored heels, holding a large leather purse against her ribs. She had driven an hour and a half from Columbus and still looked ready to show a house. "Oh, Mom." Melissa wrapped both arms around her. Nora smelled expensive citrus perfume, and the winter air caught in her coat. For 1 second, Nora became boneless. Eric arrived 20 minutes later, his shirt half tucked and his face almost gray. He went to the wrong waiting area first, then blamed the signs. Paige came last because she lived farthest away. She hurried in with damp hair and no makeup, carrying 4 bottled waters as if dehydration were the next emergency. The doctor took them into a consultation room where the chairs had been arranged in a careful circle. He said cardiac arrest. He said they had done everything. He addressed most of it to the children because Nora was staring at a thin scratch on the toe of Ray's cap. Eric sat beside her and put a hand between her shoulder blades. "I've got you, Mom," he said. At the time, she believed him. In the days that followed, her children became a weather system around her. Melissa made lists. Eric moved furniture for no clear reason. Paige opened the refrigerator every half hour and announced what people had brought. "You have 3 lasagnas," she said on the second evening. "Who brings lasagna to a woman who owns 1 fork? I own 12 forks. You know what I mean." "No, but you're very confident." Paige laughed, then covered her mouth because laughter seemed temporarily illegal. Nora laughed too. It came out as one sharp bark, startling both of them. The funeral home director had known Ray for years and kept calling him Raymond, which nobody else did. Melissa corrected him twice. Eric wanted Ray buried in his Greenbells Garden Center work shirt. Paige thought he should wear a suit. Nora settled it by choosing the navy sport coat Ray had worn to every wedding, anniversary dinner, and uncomfortable restaurant since 1998. "He hated that coat," Eric said. "He hated all coats with structure." "Then why that one?" "Because if I put him in the green shirt, half the town will ask him for advice about their hydrangeas." That ended the discussion. The funeral filled the little brick church near the river. Customers Nora barely recognized told stories about Ray rescuing azaleas, sharpening mower blades, and delivering mulch after closing. A woman with a cloud of silver hair clasped Nora's hands and said Ray had saved her Japanese maple. He told me it wasn't dead, the woman whispered. He said that about most things, Nora replied. At the reception, Nora stood beside a folding table covered with casseroles and listened to people praise Ray for work she had often done. Ray always knew what to order. Ray never forgot a customer. Ray kept that place running through the recession. She did not correct them. Grief had not made her generous. It had made conversation exhausting. Tasha appeared at her elbow with a paper plate. You need to eat. I've been eating since 6 this morning. You move food around a plate. Different activity. Tasha was 48, broad-shouldered, with dark curls she contained using pencils, rubber bands, and once a plastic plant tag. Ray called her the flower girl, even after she had worked for them 14 years. Today she wore a black dress and heavy brown boots with dried soil caught in the seams. Nora looked at the plate. Ham, potato salad, a deviled egg dusted with paprika. I don't like deviled eggs, I know. Mr. Bell did. Nora looked up. Tasha's mouth tightened. Sorry, no, put it there. She ate the egg in 2 bites. It tasted like mustard and nothing. By late afternoon, the church basement had emptied. Melissa gathered the sympathy cards into a shopping bag. Eric loaded flowers into Nora's station wagon. Paige stood at the coffee urn, scraping a thumbnail over a spot of dried sugar. We should go home with you, she said. All 3 of you. At least tonight. What are you expecting? A haunting? Paige's eyes filled so quickly that Nora regretted the joke. I just don't want you alone. Nora didn't want to be alone either, which was why she said, I'll be fine. All 3 came home with her. They slept badly in the rooms they had once occupied and now found too small. Melissa complained that the mattress leaned downhill. Eric drank 2 fingers of Ray's bourbon at the kitchen table and left the glass there. Paige wandered into Nora's bedroom at 1 in the morning and crawled onto Ray's side of the bed without asking. Neither woman slept. They lay facing the ceiling, shoulder to shoulder, but not touching. Did he say anything? Paige whispered. Nora knew what she meant. He said the greenhouse felt like Miami with a fever. Paige made a small, wet sound that might have been a laugh. That sounds like Dad. Yes. Were you with him? No. Tasha found him. Paige turned her head. Are you mad at yourself? Nora did not answer. Paige reached across the gap and took her hand under the blanket. Her palm was warm and dry, the same shape Nora remembered from crossing parking lots decades ago, though she did not permit herself to follow that memory very far. For the first week, the children divided their attention as if they were running shifts. Melissa called each morning at 7:45, usually while driving. Did you sleep? A little. Did you eat? I understand food, Melissa. Did you call the attorney? Not yet. There would be a pause. Then Melissa would soften her voice. I'm not trying to push. I just don't want you overwhelmed. Eric came Sunday with corned beef sandwiches and spent 2 hours in the garage. He returned holding an extension cord and a galvanized box full of screws. Dad had 27 screwdrivers. He liked being prepared. For what? Opening a screwdriver store? He was preparing for your visits. You always took one. I borrowed them. Then 23 are probably at your house. Paige sent messages late at night, pictures of clouds, a song Ray liked. Once, a photograph of a crooked wooden birdhouse he had helped her build when she was in college. Her texts ended with hearts in different colors, none of which Nora understood. The questions about the estate arrived carefully. Melissa asked first, while standing at Nora's kitchen counter 3 days after the funeral. She was sorting bills into piles and had removed her rings so they would not catch on the envelopes. Did Dad keep his insurance information in the fireproof box? Some of it. Do you know the combination? Yes. I only ask because policies can have deadlines. Life insurance doesn't spoil, honey. Melissa pressed her lips together. I'm trying to help. I know. Nora did know. That was the trouble. Melissa could be helpful and controlling with the same breath. She could rearrange a grieving woman's mail and remember exactly how Nora took her tea. She could make Nora feel protected, then somehow leave her feeling incompetent. Eric wanted to know whether the truck was paid off. Paige mentioned that Ray had once promised her his turntable, though neither of them knew if it still worked. Each question was reasonable on its own. Together, they gathered weight. The attorney scheduled a family meeting for the first Monday in April. Melissa put it in everyone's shared calendar. Eric asked if he needed to take the whole day off. Paige wrote, hard but necessary. followed by a white heart. On the Sunday before the meeting, Eric brought lunch again. They ate at the scarred oak table in Nora's kitchen. He took Ray's chair without appearing to notice. "What do you think the acreage is worth?" he asked. Nora set down her sandwich. Eric chewed, then looked embarrassed. "I'm not being weird." Melissa said, "Commercial land out that way has gone up." Melissa says that about any land within walking distance of pavement. I just wondered. So does she. He wiped mustard from his thumb. "You wouldn't stay there alone, would you?" "At the house?" "Eventually. I mean 6 acres, the business, all that upkeep. You don't have to decide now. That's a relief. I'm on your side, Mom." She looked at him across the table. Eric had raised eyebrows, and Nora's habit of defending himself before anyone accused him. "I wasn't aware there were sides." "There aren't." "Good." The next morning, the attorney canceled. Nora made the 3 calls, crossed the family meeting off the calendar, and waited for the daily machinery of concern to continue. It did not. At first, the silence even felt restful. She went to the garden center and sat in the office with the door open. The heater beneath Ray's desk clicked and rattled. Outside, a delivery truck backed toward the loading area with a long electronic beep. Luis appeared in the doorway, holding 2 clipboards. "Sorry to bother you. You're not bothering me. We got a problem with the north greenhouse. Heat? Water line." "Of course." He hesitated. Luis had worked around Nora long enough to know when she was lying, but he was polite enough not to identify it aloud. "You want Tasha?" he asked. "I want a water line that doesn't leak." That wasn't one of the choices. Despite herself, Nora smiled. Her phone lay face up beside the grocery pad. No missed calls, no messages from Melissa asking whether she had slept, or Eric asking what she wanted for lunch, or Paige sending a blue heart into the dark. Nora turned the phone face down. "Show me," she told Luis. Then she followed him toward the north greenhouse, where water was already spreading beneath the benches and finding every low place in the floor. The leak had started behind a bench of rosemary and spread under 3 rows of geraniums before Luis found the shutoff. Water darkened the knees of his work pants. Tasha stood on the other side of the greenhouse with a push broom, driving a gray wave toward the floor drain. "Pipe split at the elbow," Luis said. "Probably froze during that cold snap." The heater was running. The heater was performing emotionally. "Mechanically, I have concerns." Ray would have blamed the thermostat. Nora almost said so, then stopped. She was beginning to notice how often the dead entered a room through somebody else's sentence. She removed her coat and hung it on a rolling rack. "What do we lose?" "Maybe 6 flats," Tasha said. "More if the roots sit in this." "Move the geraniums to number 2. Number 2's full. Then make it less full." Tasha leaned on the broom. "That sounds suspiciously like management. It's contagious." For the next hour, they shifted plants, stacked trays, and laid towels beneath the leaking joint. Nora carried what she could and let Luis take the heavier flats without arguing. Ray would have argued. Ray had once strained his back moving a concrete birdbath because Luis told him it required 2 people. At 10:30, Tasha caught Nora trying to lift one end of a waterlogged wooden pallet. "Put that down. I have it. You have arthritis and poor judgment. The arthritis is documented. The rest is opinion." Tasha took the pallet anyway. Customers began arriving before the greenhouse floor was dry. Early spring brought people who were tired of bare ground and willing to buy anything green. A retired accountant wanted fertilizer for peonies he had not yet planted. 2 women debated whether pansies looked cheerful or desperate. A man in a University of Cincinnati jacket asked Nora where Ray was, then remembered halfway through the question. His face collapsed. "Oh, Lord. I'm sorry." "It's all right." "No, I knew. My wife told me. It slipped my mind. That happens. Ray always picked my tomato plants." Nora glanced toward the vegetable starts. "Early girl, that's the one. He gave you early girl because you plant too soon and refused to listen." The man smiled uncertainly. "He said I had an optimistic soil temperature. That was Ray being diplomatic." She selected 4 plants and told him to keep them indoors for another 2 weeks. At the register, he touched her wrist and said he was sorry again. Nora thanked him because people needed their condolences accepted almost as badly as she needed them to stop. Near noon, she checked her phone. There was a pharmacy notification, a weather alert, and a photograph from Melissa's real estate business showing a white kitchen with brass handles. Melissa appeared in the corner beside the words, "Pending in 4 days." Nora pressed the heart beneath it. 6 minutes later, Melissa liked Nora's response. That tiny exchange irritated her more than no exchange at all. She stayed through lunch, eating half a corned beef sandwich left from Eric's visit. The bread had gone stiff along one edge. Ray would have cut that part off and dropped it for the yellow cat that patrolled behind the loading dock. The cat's official name was Marigold, though Ray called her Walter for nearly a year before Tasha took her to the veterinarian. At 2, Lewis knocked on the office doorframe. "You know a plumber who will answer today?" "I know 3 who won't. Call Deacon. Deacon still owes us for those junipers. Then this can be an exchange of hostages." Nora found Deacon's number on a paper list taped inside Ray's desk drawer. The drawer stuck halfway. When she pulled harder, the contents shifted with a metallic clatter. Ray's desk had always looked tidy because he kept everything untidy inside it. Screws rolled among seed packets, peppermint candies, tape measures, and a pair of reading glasses he had accused Nora of losing. She lifted them out and held them by one arm. Tasha appeared with invoices. "What?" "I found his glasses." "Which ones?" "The brown ones." He had 4 pairs. He spent 2 months looking for these. He spent 2 months complaining about looking for those. Different activity. Nora placed the glasses on top of the desk. Tasha's expression changed. "Sorry," she said. "You apologize too much. Only around you. Why?" "Because Mr. Bell died, and every third thing I say sounds mean afterward. Ray liked mean things. He liked his own mean things. That's true." Tasha set down the invoices and left, before Nora could see whether her eyes were wet. Nora was grateful. She had no room inside her for anyone else's grief that afternoon. Deacon came at 4 and repaired the pipe for the price of the junipers, plus $80. Nora wrote the check herself. He looked at her signature and then at the office door, as if Ray might come through it to approve the transaction. "Should I make up a proper invoice?" he asked. "Unless you'd like the tax authorities to imagine the junipers. Ray and I usually work things out. Ray is difficult to reach." Deacon flushed from his collar to his ears. Nora regretted the words as soon as they landed, but not enough to retrieve them. "Give the invoice to Tasha." At home that evening, she opened the refrigerator and found the same crowded shelves. Containers had been labeled by women from church in round, careful handwriting. Chicken and rice, beef stew, macaroni, freezes well. One foil pan said brunch casserole. Though Nora had never understood when brunch officially began, she heated the stew and ate at the kitchen table without turning on the overhead light. Ray's chair was pushed back farther than hers because Eric had left it that way. At 7:45, the time Melissa usually called, Nora carried her bowl to the sink. She rinsed it slowly. At 7:52, she dried the counter. At 8, she checked that the phone volume was on. Then she took the garbage outside and scolded herself all the way to the bin. The following morning, Eric sent a photograph of a screwdriver lying on his workbench. "Found one," he wrote. Nora replied, "Only 22 to go." He answered with a laughing face. She watched the 3 dots appear as he began another message. They vanished, appeared again, vanished. Nothing followed. At the garden center, the north greenhouse smelled damp and medicinal from the rosemary. Luis had arrived early to check the repair. Tasha was arguing with a supplier on the office phone. "No, Keith, I understand what net 30 means. I also understand 47 is more than 30. She saw Nora and covered the receiver. "It's Green Valley. What do they want? Money? They're old-fashioned." Nora held out her hand. Keith from Green Valley had sold plants to Bells for 22 years. He spoke gently, which made the conversation worse. There were 2 unpaid invoices from February. Ray had promised payment after the spring opening. Green Valley could not release the next shipment until the balance was cleared. "How much?" Nora asked, though the invoices sat in front of her. Keith told her. "I can send half today." "I'm sorry, Nora. You just told me your warehouse is full. My warehouse is full of inventory I haven't been paid for. That sounds like poor planning." Keith laughed once unwillingly. Ray said the same thing. Of course he had. Ray could make late payment sound like a shared joke. Nora had spent years following behind him, turning charm into checks. She promised to call back and hung up. Tasha remained beside the desk. "We need that shipment. I can read an order sheet. It's most of the annual color for opening weekend." "I know. We could move money from payroll." "No, just for 4 days." "No." Tasha folded her arms. "Then what?" Nora looked through the office window toward the greenhouses. Customers moved between the benches in winter coats, lifting plants toward the light. Ray had ordered heavily every spring because empty tables made him nervous. When sales were good, his instinct looked brave. When they were not, Nora spent the summer negotiating extensions. "What haven't we sold from the landscaping yard?" she asked. "Plenty." "You want the depressing list alphabetically or by weight? By what we can return?" They spent the afternoon counting stone edging, irrigation fittings, unopened soil amendments, and decorative pots Ray had bought at an auction because he believed blue would be big. The pots were not blue. They were a shade Tasha called municipal teal. At 3, Nora phoned 3 vendors and arranged returns with restocking fees. It would cover half the Green Valley balance. For the rest, she transferred money from the garden center's small emergency reserve. "That reserve is for emergencies," Tasha said. "Our spring inventory is being held hostage in a warehouse." "I thought Deacon was the hostage situation." "We're having an eventful week." Nora authorized the payment. The act did not feel decisive. It felt like pulling a blanket from one cold person to cover another. The shipment arrived the following afternoon. Luis stood at the loading bay, checking trays against the manifest. He found 12 flats of red salvia they had not ordered. "Send them back," Nora said. "Driver says they're promotional. Nothing red has ever been free." The driver called Keith. Keith insisted they were a courtesy, and Nora finally accepted them. Tasha watched the flats roll into the greenhouse. "Ray ordered those," she said quietly. Nora looked at her. "He called Keith last month. Said the front beds needed red this year. The front beds are planted in yellow and white." I told him. "What did he say?" "That people driving 45 miles an hour need simple colors." Nora stared at the salvia. It was exactly the sort of pronouncement Ray made when he had already spent money. "Put them on the back bench," she said. "We can use them. I don't want them in the front beds." Tasha nodded, though Nora had not explained why 12 flats of flowers suddenly felt like an argument she could still lose. That night, Paige posted a photograph of a restaurant table. 2 glasses of wine, a candle, a man's hand near a basket of bread. Nora looked at it longer than necessary. Paige had mentioned seeing someone named Graham, though every time Nora asked a question, Paige became vague in the way adults did when they wanted privacy from the people who had once changed their sheets. Nora typed, "Looks nice." She deleted it. She typed, "Hope you're having fun." Deleted that too. In the end, she pressed the heart and set down the phone. On Saturday morning, Melissa called. Nora answered before the first full ring. "Hi," she said too brightly. "Hey, Mom, quick question. Did the attorney mention whether they're still doing the inventory appraisal Monday?" Nora's hand tightened around the phone. "I believe so." "Okay, good. I just wondered because if they need comparable land values, I can pull some. They didn't ask for them." "I know. I'm offering. Thank you." Another pause. "How are you?" Melissa asked. Nora looked through the kitchen window at the bare maple near the driveway. Ray had meant to trim the broken limb before spring. "I'm fine. You sound tired. I've been working." "At the garden center?" "That's where I generally work." "Mom, you don't have to prove anything right now." Nora almost asked what Melissa thought she was proving, and to whom. Instead, she said, "I should go. We open in 20 minutes. All right. Call me if you need something." The line went quiet. Nora held the phone against her ear a moment longer, listening to nothing. By the 11th day, she could no longer pretend she was giving them room. She called Melissa at lunchtime. Melissa answered through her car speakers, her voice surrounded by road noise. "I'm headed into a showing. I won't keep you. Everything okay?" "Yes. I just thought I'd say hello." "Oh, good. I'm glad you called." Nora waited. Melissa said, "I'll call you back after this." She did not. Eric's call went to voicemail. Nora left a message asking whether he had found any more screwdrivers. He responded 2 hours later with a thumbs up, though it was unclear which part of the message it answered. Paige replied to Nora's call with a text. "Sorry, crazy week. Call tomorrow?" Nora wrote. "Of course." Tomorrow passed. At closing time, Nora stood at the garden center register while Tasha counted the drawer. Luis had gone home. Rain ticked against the greenhouse roof, soft at first, then harder. Tasha separated the bills into neat stacks. "You waiting for somebody?" "No." "You keep looking at the parking lot." "I'm checking the rain." "The rain's not parking." Nora gave her a look. Tasha slid the cash drawer shut. "I'm making soup tonight. You want some? I have enough food to survive a siege." That wasn't the question. Nora looked toward the dark office, where Ray's brown glasses still rested on the desk, exactly where she had placed them. What kind? Chicken tortilla? Too spicy? For you? Probably. Bring it anyway. Tasha nodded as if Nora had agreed to something larger. Outside, water ran along the curb and gathered in the lowest part of the parking lot. Nora watched it find a path around fallen leaves, spilled soil, and the tires of her station wagon. Then she turned off the front sign and locked the door. Tasha brought the soup in a glass jar that had once held pickles. "Don't microwave the lid," she said. "I've used a kitchen before. Recent evidence is limited." Nora tucked the jar into the office refrigerator beside 3 bottles of water and a container of yogurt that had expired while Ray was alive. "You can throw that out," Tasha said. "It's not yours. It belongs to science now." Nora threw it out. She ate the soup at her desk after closing when the rain had thinned to mist. Tasha had been right about the spice. After 3 bites, Nora's nose ran. After 6, she could feel her scalp. Ray hated spicy food. He considered black pepper an aggressive choice. Whenever Tasha brought lunch, he would sniff the air and ask whether the building had been evacuated. Nora finished every drop. At home, she placed the empty jar in the dishwasher and caught herself preparing to explain it. Ray had disliked washing jars because, according to him, they multiplied in cabinets and became a moral burden. Nora stood with one hand on the dishwasher rack, waiting for his objection. Nothing came. She put the jar in anyway. Sunday arrived without Eric or corned beef. At 11, Nora received a message from him. "Buried today." Next Sunday? She stared at the word buried. Work, she assumed. Eric sold commercial heating equipment and spent half his life driving between industrial parks. She knew this. She also knew it took 11 seconds to type a second sentence. "No problem," she answered. She ate lunch at the kitchen counter because sitting at the table made the empty chairs look intentional. The church women's casseroles had begun to disappear, though the freezer still held 2 square foil pans with no labels. Nora had decided they could remain unidentified until she was emotionally prepared for either enchiladas or tuna. Paige did not call. By mid-afternoon, Nora could feel herself becoming ridiculous. She picked up the phone, put it down, wiped the stove, picked it up again, and finally called a woman named Diane Foster, whose number she had not dialed in nearly a year. Diane answered on the 5th ring. "If this is the Republican Party, I've changed my identity. It's Nora." There was a short silence. "That's almost as surprising." Nora looked at the clock. "Is this a bad time?" "No. I'm painting my bathroom and losing the will to live." Diane had worked with Nora at a bank before Bell's Garden Center became too large to run in evenings. They had once eaten lunch together every weekday. Over the years, their friendship had narrowed to Christmas cards, occasional funerals, and promises to get coffee when things settled down. "I heard about Ray," Diane said, her voice losing its edge. "I sent a card. I got it. I wanted to come, but my sister had surgery in Dayton. You don't have to explain. People say that when they absolutely expect an explanation. I don't. Then you've improved." Nora smiled and sat at the kitchen table. Diane asked how she was, and Nora said, "Fine," with less success than she had managed with Melissa. "Fine like you're eating and sleeping, or fine like you've started labeling the walls so you remember which house is yours?" Somewhere in between. They talked for 20 minutes. Diane complained about the bathroom paint, which had looked pale green on the sample and now resembled hospital pudding. Nora told her about the greenhouse leak. Neither woman offered a lesson about grief. Before hanging up, Diane said, "Call me again before next Easter. I called you this time. I know. It's alarming." When the line went quiet, Nora felt better and disloyal. She carried that feeling into Monday morning, where it was quickly replaced by irritation. A man named Calvin Reese was waiting outside the office. Calvin had managed the garden center's landscaping crews for 6 years. He was 53, permanently sunburned, and wore wraparound sunglasses on top of his head even indoors. "We need to talk," he said. That phrase has never improved a morning. He shut the office door behind him. "Hillside offered me a crew supervisor position." Nora waited. "I took it." "When?" "Friday." "Before or after you submitted our spring fuel order?" Calvin rubbed his jaw. "I didn't know how you were going to handle things here. The crews need fuel. Do we have crews? 2 guys are staying." "Probably." "Probably is not a head count." He shifted in the chair. Ray had hired Calvin after meeting him at an equipment auction. They had bonded over diesel engines and a shared belief that written estimates made customers nervous. Nora had spent 6 years adding numbers to Calvin's handshakes. "I'm sorry about Ray," he said. "I really am, but people are saying you'll sell. People enjoy saying things that cost them nothing. Melissa's in real estate." Nora's attention sharpened. "What does Melissa have to do with this?" "Nothing. I just figured she'd know what the land's worth. Did you speak to her?" "No. No, ma'am." Calvin called her ma'am only when he wanted distance. "When's your last day? I can give you 2 weeks. You already gave Hillside a start date." His silence answered. Nora folded her hands on the desk. "Finish the Mercer retaining wall. Return the rented compactor. Give Tasha every open contract, customer deposit, and crew schedule before you leave today. Today? You can't supervise our crews while promising yourself to theirs." His face reddened. "Ray would have let me work out my notice. Ray isn't making this decision." The words sat heavily between them. Calvin stood. "Guess not." He opened the door and nearly collided with Tasha, who had been holding a stack of mail within convenient listening distance. "Morning," she said. Calvin walked past her. Tasha entered and shut the door. "He's going to Hillside?" "Yes. They've been poaching everybody with a pulse and a driver's license. Apparently our standards were higher. We accepted Calvin." Tasha put down the mail. "What are we going to do? Find out whether the landscaping division makes money. You don't know? I know what the monthly reports claim." That sounded ominous. It was intended to. For years, landscaping had been Ray's favorite part of the business. He liked arriving at a bare property with a truck full of men and materials, then leaving behind visible proof. A planted storefront could be photographed. A repaired lawn could be admired from the road. Nora's work ended in balanced columns and paid bills, achievements nobody drove past slowly. She pulled the landscaping records from the cabinet. The files were current because she kept them current. The truth was not hidden. It was merely scattered across fuel, repairs, seasonal wages, insurance, equipment payments, and deposits Ray had used to cover earlier jobs. Tasha sat opposite her with a calculator. "This one made $1,200, she said, before labor." "Oh, now it lost $700. What about the Fox Ridge installation? 2 replacement trees under warranty, plus 3 days because Calvin ordered the wrong stone. So it lost money too." "Not exactly. We made $86. Tasha leaned back. "We should take everyone to lunch." They worked until the sun moved across the office window and the numbers became difficult to argue with. Landscaping brought in impressive checks and consumed nearly all of them. The division owned 2 trucks, a skid steer, 3 trailers, a trencher, mowers, blowers, and enough specialized equipment to maintain a small principality. Much of it carried loans or required repairs. Ray had believed one strong summer would catch them up. Nora knew because he had said it every February. At 4, Luis tapped on the door. "You two hiding?" "From prosperity," Tasha said. Luis looked at the spreadsheets. "Ah." "What does ah mean?" Nora asked. "It means I've seen Mr. Bell look at papers like that." "When?" "Usually before he bought another machine." Nora removed her glasses. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Tell you what? Your husband liked machines? I thought this was known. That we were losing money." Luis pulled out a chair but did not sit. "We did good work. That is not the same thing." "No." "Did Calvin know?" "Calvin knows what's in front of his boots." "And Ray?" Luis considered the question longer than Nora wanted. He thought busy meant healthy, he said. The answer was kind enough to be believable. Nora spent Tuesday calling customers with open contracts. The Mercer retaining wall would be finished. 3 smaller spring cleanups could be transferred to independent crews if the customers agreed. A large installation scheduled for May had not yet begun, and Nora offered to return the deposit. The customer, a dentist named Dr. Pritchard, sounded alarmed. "Is Bell's closing?" "No." "That's what I heard." "From whom?" "People." Nora nearly asked whether these people had a central office. "The retail garden center is open," she said. "We are reconsidering how much installation work we take. Ray designed this whole plan. I have his plan. He told me he'd personally supervise." Nora looked at Ray's brown glasses on the desk. "He won't be able to." "Doctor?" Pritchard went silent. "Oh," he said finally. "I'm sorry. I knew, of course. I just—" Yes. I suppose I wasn't thinking. No. By Wednesday, Nora had returned 2 deposits and arranged for 3 clients to choose between a transfer and a refund. Every conversation cost money. Every completed call also loosened something in her chest. She had not decided to close the division. She told herself she was only reducing commitments while she evaluated the season. Yet she asked Luis to list the equipment by age, loan balance, and condition. He brought the list Thursday afternoon. The skid steer's worth something, he said. Truck 2 also. What about truck 1? Depends whether the buyer wants transportation or a long-term relationship with my toolbox. The trencher? Good. The mowers? Sell one. Keep one for the property. Nora ran her finger down the page. Each item called up an image of Ray, leaning against the skid steer with a coffee cup, cursing the red mower, backing a trailer into the loading bay while refusing 3 people's guidance. These prices realistic. Conservative. Ray hated conservative estimates. Ray's not selling. Luis glanced at her, then away. Nora phoned a regional equipment dealer. She described the skid steer and 2 trailers. The dealer offered to inspect them Friday. After the call, she sat alone in the office until the building grew quiet. Somewhere in the greenhouse, the ventilation fan shut off. The silence that followed had weight. Her phone rang. Nora snatched it up before she could see the name. Hello? Mrs. Bell, a man said. This is Arnold Mercer. Calvin gave me your number. Nora closed her eyes. Yes, Mr. Mercer. He wanted to know whether his retaining wall would be finished before the weekend. Nora assured him it would. When the call ended, she opened her messages. Nothing from Paige, nothing from Eric since the screwdriver. Melissa had sent a link to an article about grief and decision-making with the sentence, "Don't do anything major for 1 year," highlighted in the preview. Nora stared at it. Then she photographed the equipment list and sent it to Tasha and Luis with a message. Dealer comes Friday. Do not let Ray's ghost buy anything from him. Tasha answered first. No promises. Luis responded with a photograph of the red salvia still waiting on the back bench. He already did. The equipment dealer arrived in a white pickup so clean it looked rented for a wedding. His name was Warren Pike, and he wore a quilted vest with his company logo stitched over the heart. He walked around the skid steer twice without touching it. Hours? He asked. 2100, Luis said. Service records? Nora held up a folder. Warren seemed disappointed. Perhaps he preferred widows who stored machinery history in coffee cans. He climbed into the cab, started the engine, raised the bucket, lowered it, and listened with his head tilted. Luis stood beside Nora with both hands in his jacket pockets. What's he listening for? She whispered. Regret. Whose? Depends what he offers. Warren inspected the 2 trailers next. One was 11 years old and needed new wiring. The other had been purchased the previous summer, a fact Nora remembered chiefly because Ray had mentioned it after it was delivered. It was a good price, he had said. How good? Good enough that the exact number would distract you. The exact number was still on the loan statement. Warren spent 40 minutes with the equipment and 7 minutes making the offer. It was lower than Luis's estimate, but high enough to clear the skid steer loan, pay off the newer trailer, and leave enough to settle the remaining Green Valley balance. That truck included? Warren asked, nodding toward the newer landscaping pickup. Not today. Bundle would improve the numbers. For you, for everybody. That phrase usually means you. He smiled. Ray warned me you were the difficult one. You knew Ray? Bought a trencher from him 4 years ago. He told me he traded it. He traded it for money. Nora looked at Luis. Did you know? Luis studied the sky. Warren's smile weakened. Maybe I've got the wrong Bell. No, you have the right one. She asked for the offer in writing. Tasha read it twice in the office, holding the page at arm's length because she refused to buy reading glasses. If we sell, can we still finish Mercer? She asked. We can rent what we need for 1 day. And after Mercer, no new installations. Tasha lowered the page. You decided? I'm deciding. You changed the verb. I'm trying it on. Luis sat near the filing cabinet, turning his cap in his hands. What about Ned and Curtis? The 2 remaining crew members had been waiting to learn whether their work would continue. Neither had enough seniority to move into the retail operation without displacing someone else. They get paid through the end of next week, Nora said. I'll give them references and call 3 companies. Hillside's hiring, Tasha said. I know. You're going to send them to Calvin? I'm going to send them toward paychecks. The room went quiet. Tasha put Warren's offer on the desk. Ray would hate this. Yes. He'd say spring is when landscaping makes its money. He said that every spring. He'd fight you. He fought me while he was alive. I don't see why death should improve his manners. Luis looked down, but Nora saw his mouth move. Are you smiling? She asked. No. Tasha? He is. Luis raised both hands. It sounded like him. That's all? It did. Ray would have laughed, then argued harder. Nora signed the dealer's acceptance before she could mistake pain for a business reason. The skid steer and trailers were collected Monday morning. Warren sent a driver who chained everything to a flatbed, while Nora watched from the office window. Mud had dried in the skid steer's tire treads. A faded Bell's Garden Center decal clung to one side. Nora expected the removal to feel violent. Instead, the equipment left with an almost insulting lack of ceremony. The truck pulled onto the county road, waited for traffic, and disappeared behind a propane delivery van. Tasha came into the office carrying a box. What's that? Things from the skid steer. Inside were 2 ratchet straps, a rusted wrench, 3 pairs of work gloves, a fast food napkin, and one of Ray's green travel mugs. Nora lifted the mug. The lid had a tooth mark near the drinking slot where Ray used to bite it when both hands were occupied. Wash it? Tasha asked. No. Throw it out? No. Excellent. Love a third option. Nora put the mug on the shelf above the filing cabinet. Ned accepted the reference and the number for Hillside. Curtis took the news badly. He stood in the loading bay with his arms folded, asking why Nora had not given the crews 1 season to prove themselves. You've had 6, she said. Ray had plans. He always had plans. He told Calvin we were bidding the county clinic. The bid was never submitted. We could still do it. With what equipment? Curtis looked toward the empty space where the skid steer had been. That's convenient, he said. Nora felt Tasha stiffen beside her. Your last check includes an extra week, Nora said. If you'd rather not accept it, tell payroll. Curtis's anger faltered, confused by the offer. I didn't say that. Good. Later, Tasha followed Nora into the office. You didn't have to give them extra. Yes, I did. Why? Because their rent won't care whether closing the division made sense. Tasha leaned against the doorway. You know Curtis called you a cold-hearted old lady in the parking lot. He's angry. You're not that old. Thank you. The story traveled faster than the equipment. Customers came in asking whether Bell's was shutting down. A woman buying potting soil said she had heard the land had already been sold to a pharmacy. A man from the feed store called to offer Nora the name of an auctioneer. Melissa sent a message Wednesday night. I'm hearing rumors. Please call me. Nora read it while brushing her teeth. She rinsed, wiped her mouth, and returned the call from the bedroom. Melissa answered immediately. What did you sell? Good evening to you too. Mom, the skid steer and 2 trailers. You sold Dad's skid steer, the garden center's skid steer. Why? Because it was attached to a division that loses money. According to whom? Arithmetic. Melissa exhaled. Nora pictured her closing her eyes the way she did when a seller refused to repaint a purple dining room. You shouldn't be making big decisions this soon. I believe you sent me literature. I sent it because grief affects judgment. Whose judgment? Mine, specifically? That isn't what I meant. It rarely is. Did you talk to the attorney? The attorney does not operate a garden center, but the equipment affects the estate. The sale and the payment of its loans will be documented. I'm not accusing you of anything. Nora sat on the edge of the bed. Ray's navy robe still hung behind the bathroom door. She could see one sleeve in the mirror. Then, what are you doing? I'm worried. You could have called before there was machinery involved. Silence. Melissa's voice changed. I have called about the appraisal, about land prices, about whether the will has a date. That's not fair. No, Nora said. It isn't. She ended the call before either of them could choose words they would have to carry. Eric arrived Sunday at 9:15, before the garden center opened. Nora saw his car pull into the empty lot while she was changing the register tape. He entered through the unlocked front door and let it swing shut behind him. You sold the skid steer. Good morning. Calvin called me. Calvin seems to have recovered from being buried. What? Nothing. Eric wore jeans and a charcoal jacket. His hair was still damp from the shower. He had driven nearly an hour, and the speed of his arrival might have touched Nora if his first sentence had been different. "Why is Calvin calling you about my business?" she asked. "He wanted me to know what was happening. He wanted an audience. He said you shut down landscaping. I did. And sold equipment before the estates even settled." Nora placed the register tape on the counter. "Melissa already performed this scene. You'll need new material. I'm not Melissa. No. You come in person when you're angry." His jaw tightened. "I'm trying to protect what Dad spent his life building. So am I. By breaking it apart? By removing the part that was bleeding money. Dad said landscaping carried the retail side. Ray said many things with confidence." Eric glanced toward the greenhouse, where Tasha was watering hanging baskets. "Did she talk you into this?" Nora's face went still. "Be careful." "I'm asking." "No, you're finding a woman to blame because you don't like believing your mother made a decision." "That's not what I meant. Your sister has copyrighted that phrase." Eric lowered his voice. "Mom, if you sell things off now, what's left later?" There it was, not hidden, not softened enough. Later. Nora looked at him until he shifted his weight. "For whom?" she asked. "You know what I mean. I want to hear you say it. For everybody. For you. For us. This business is paying my income now. Its value is not a pie cooling on a windowsill while you wait for the attorney to say you may cut it. I never said it was. You didn't have to." Eric's face reddened. "I came every Sunday, for 3 Sundays. Dad had just died." "Yes," Nora said. "He had." The front door rattled as Tasha locked it from inside, then flipped the sign to "closed." She met Nora's eyes through the glass and moved back into the greenhouse. Eric shoved his hands into his pockets. "I have work. I have a life. You act like missing one lunch means I abandoned you." "It wasn't one lunch," I texted. "You sent me a photograph of a screwdriver. I was trying to make you laugh." "You did. Then you disappeared." His anger cracked around the edges. "I didn't disappear." Nora walked toward the office. "Come here. I don't need a tour. You came to protect the business. You should meet it." Inside, she pulled 3 binders from the lower cabinet and placed them on Ray's desk. Payroll, supplier accounts, landscaping contracts. She opened the oldest first. "What am I looking at?" Eric asked. "My name." Her signature appeared on checks, tax forms, loan applications, vendor agreements, insurance renewals. Years of it. Nora turned pages without rushing. "Your father sold plants," she said. "I made sure there were plants to sell. He designed jobs. I priced labor after he forgot it. He promised customers replacements, and I found the money. When you needed tuition your last semester, I took no paycheck for 2 months." Eric looked up. "You said the business was slow." "It was. I didn't know. You weren't supposed to. You were 22. He touched the edge of a page. "I'm not saying you didn't work. You called it Dad's business. That's just how we say it." "Who is we?" He had no answer. Nora closed the binder. "The will may tell you what your father wanted done with what belonged to him. It will not tell me whether to keep losing money to preserve your idea of him." Eric stared at the paperwork, then at Ray's glasses on the desk, and the green travel mug on the shelf. His shoulders lowered. "I'm sorry," he said, though the apology sounded startled, as if it had escaped before he approved it. Nora did not rescue him from the discomfort. The first customer of the morning pulled into the lot. Tasha turned the sign to open, but remained near the register, busying herself with seed packets. Eric moved toward the door. "Eric," he stopped. Nora wanted to ask if he would stay for lunch. She wanted him to offer before she had to ask. Both wants lodged in the same narrow place in her throat. "Calvin's version of events," she said, "is not a public service." Eric nodded without turning, then he left. Through the office window, Nora watched him sit in his car. He did not start it for several minutes. When he finally drove away, he forgot to wave. Nora found the corned beef sandwich after closing. It sat in a paper bag on the passenger side of her station wagon, wrapped in white butcher paper with a pickle tucked beside it. Eric must have left it through the unlocked rear door before driving away. There was no note. She carried the bag into the kitchen and set it on the table. For several minutes, she considered the sandwich an accusation. Then she cut it in half, ate one piece, and wrapped the other for lunch. The next morning, Eric sent a message. "I shouldn't have said Dad's business." Nora read it while unlocking the office. She typed 3 answers and erased them all. The first was too gentle. The second sounded like a receipt. The third asked when he had begun discussing the garden center with Calvin, and she knew that question would turn an apology into another defense. Finally, she wrote, "No, you shouldn't have." Eric responded, "I know." It was not forgiveness, but it was at least the same conversation. Spring opening had always occurred on the third Saturday of April, regardless of weather, inventory, or common sense. Ray advertised it as the beginning of planting season. Nora called it the annual festival of people purchasing tomatoes too early. Without the landscaping crews, the property felt quieter. The empty equipment spaces behind the loading bay collected wind-blown leaves. Curtis returned his key in an envelope and did not come inside. Ned stopped by for his final check and reported that Hillside had hired him. "Calvin put in a word," he said. "That was decent of him?" "He said you'd say it wasn't. Calvin has known me longer than I realized." Ned shifted the check between his hands. "You think you'll start crews again next year?" "No." The answer came more quickly than Nora expected. He nodded. "Probably smart." "I'm sorry." "So am I." They shook hands. Ned's palm was rough and cold. After he left, Nora stood in the loading bay, looking at the gravel where the trucks had been. The decision could be smart and still cost someone something. She wished more people admitted that. Inside, Tasha had covered the front counter with sketches of the greenhouse layout. "We need to talk annual color," she said. "Those words make me tired. You rejected the salvia for the front beds. I rejected Ray's opinion for the front beds. Plants rarely understand motive. What do you want?" Tasha pointed to the drawing. "Smaller annual section, more herbs, native perennials, vegetable starts. Annuals sell, annuals die. That is why they sell again. Customers are asking for things that don't need to be replaced every 6 months. Customers ask for low-maintenance plants, then buy hanging baskets that require water twice a day. They contain multitudes." Nora sat across from her. "Native perennials cost more. They also don't arrive all at once in April and hold us hostage until somebody's yard needs a marigold. Marigolds don't hold hostages. You've seen their faces." Tasha had numbers. Nora respected numbers even when they were attached to an irritating idea. Native plant sales had risen for 3 years. Annual sales remained larger, but unsold annuals became compost by June. Unsold perennials could be overwintered. "How much smaller?" Nora asked. Tasha showed her. "That's not smaller. You've removed 2 benches, 1.5. Benches don't come in halves. Then why do we own a saw?" They argued for 40 minutes and settled on 1 bench. Tasha accepted the compromise with enough cheer to reveal she had wanted one all along. "You planned that," Nora said. "I learned from you." "No, you learned from Ray. He always asked for twice what he wanted. Then I learned from the organization." Nora promoted Tasha that afternoon. The decision had been forming for days, but the words still surprised both of them. "I want you to manage daily operations," Nora said. Tasha blinked. "I already manage daily operations. I want to pay you for it. That's suspicious. It comes with responsibility. There it is." Nora offered a salary that was higher than Tasha's current wages and lower than she deserved. She said so plainly. "When the business stabilizes, we revisit it," Nora added. "When?" 6 months. "In writing?" Nora looked at her. Tasha lifted one shoulder. "I learned from you." They wrote it down. Luis received a raise as well, though he objected on the grounds that management sounded like meetings. "You won't manage people," Nora told him. "You'll manage facilities and purchasing. Facilities are easier. They tell you where they hurt. People do too, not accurately." At home, Nora began clearing condolence food from the freezer. The first unlabeled pan contained chicken enchiladas. The second was baked ziti, which felt like winning a very small lottery. She invited Diane to dinner. Diane arrived carrying a bottle of red wine and a bath towel spotted with pale green paint. "Why did you bring a towel?" "I need an honest witness. Hospital pudding or old celery?" Nora held it beneath the kitchen light. "Old celery in a hospital, thank you." They ate baked ziti and drank wine from glasses Nora and Ray had received for their 25th anniversary. Diane asked about the children only after the second glass. "They hovering?" she said. "Hovering requires proximity." "Ah, don't say ah. Luis says, ah. I don't know Luis. He repairs things and refuses direct answers. I already like him." Nora told her about the delayed will and the calls that had evaporated. She kept the story light, arranging it around jokes. Diane did not laugh in the right places. "What?" Nora said. "Nothing. You're making a face. It's my face. You're making the version that judges people. I'm trying not to judge your children. Try harder. Why? Because I can judge them. You can't." Diane drank her wine. "That seems unfair. It's family." After dinner, they washed dishes together. Diane dried the pickle jar and asked why Nora was saving it. "It belongs to Tasha." "Who's Tasha?" Nora described her as the operations manager, then had to repeat the words because they felt new. Diane smiled. "Look at you. Don't. Ray's been gone a month and you've already promoted somebody he should have promoted years ago." Nora set a plate in the cabinet harder than necessary. Diane's smile disappeared. "That came out wrong. Yes, I'm sorry." Nora leaned against the counter. "Everyone keeps acting as if I've been waiting for him to die so I could rearrange things. I don't think that. You just said it. I said you did something overdue. That's not the same. It feels the same." Diane folded the towel over the back of a chair. "You can miss a man and still stop doing things his way." Nora looked toward Ray's empty chair. "I know," she said. Knowing had not made it easier. The weather forecast changed Thursday morning. A cold front expected to remain, north dropped toward the river valley, bringing temperatures low enough to damage the tender annuals already filling 3 greenhouses. Ray had managed freezes with propane heaters, plastic coverings, and panic. Nora preferred preparation, but by afternoon, the forecast had worsened from 31 degrees to 26. Luis checked every heater twice. "Number 3's ignition is sticking," he reported. "Can it run?" "Yes." "Can it run all night?" He made the face that meant the correct answer would be expensive. Nora called the repair company. They could send someone the next morning. "That's useful," she said. "By then we can have a memorial service for the begonias." Tasha organized staff into shifts. They moved the most vulnerable plants into Greenhouse 2, crowded rolling racks against interior walls, and covered benches with frost cloth. Nora called Green Valley and delayed a shipment due Friday. At 6, the wind began pushing hard against the plastic panels. "You should go home," Tasha told her. "So should you." "I'm 48. Congratulations. I mean, I can stay. I know what you mean." Luis's sister had a medical appointment early the next morning, and Nora ordered him home at 7. He resisted until she threatened to replace him with a person who enjoyed meetings. Tasha remained until 9. The temperature outside had fallen to 29. Greenhouse 3 stayed warm, but the faulty ignition clicked each time the burner cycled. "I'll check it every hour," Nora said. "You can't stay alone. I owned a garden center yesterday. I believe it came with night privileges." Tasha crossed her arms. "Go home," Nora said. "You've been here since 6. So have you. I'm the owner. Exhaustion is one of my benefits." Tasha finally left after making Nora promise to call if the heater failed. At 10:14, it failed. The temperature alarm began chirping in the office. Nora reset the ignition, waited for the burner to catch, and heard only the dry mechanical click. She called Tasha, then stopped before pressing send. Tasha lived 35 minutes away. Luis was farther, and his sister needed him in the morning. Nora pulled up Eric's name. Her thumb hovered over it. She called the repair company instead. Their emergency technician was handling a furnace outage at a nursing home. He might reach her by midnight, perhaps later. Nora returned to the greenhouse. She plugged in 2 portable heaters and began moving racks toward Greenhouse 2. Each rack held 8 flats. The wheels snagged on the threshold, requiring her to jerk them sideways. On the 3rd rack, pain shot through her right knee. She stopped, both hands gripping the cold metal frame. Headlights crossed the greenhouse wall. A car door slammed, then another. Eric entered wearing work boots, an insulated coat, and an expression of annoyance that looked almost exactly like Ray's. "Tasha called me," he said. Nora straightened. "Why?" "Because you wouldn't." Tasha came in behind him carrying coffee and 2 extension cords. "I called everybody," she said. "It's an inclusive emergency. You were supposed to go home. I did. It didn't take." Eric tested the nearest outlet, then went to the heater without asking permission. Heating equipment was his business, though usually on a larger scale. He removed the access panel and crouched beside the burner. "When was this serviced?" he asked. "October." "By who?" "Your father. That is not what serviced means." Nora almost smiled. Tasha saw it and looked away. The ignition sensor was corroded. Eric cleaned it, restarted the burner, and waited through 2 cycles. It caught both times, but he refused to trust it. "We keep moving the sensitive stuff," he said. Until after midnight, the 3 of them pushed racks, carried flats, and spread frost cloth. Tasha played old soul music from her phone. Eric complained about the lack of decent extension cords, then found 6 coiled in a cabinet he had checked twice. Nora labeled the most crowded rows while pretending her knee did not hurt. At 1, the repair technician called to say he was on his way. "Tell him not to rush," Eric said. "We're stable." Nora ended the call and looked at him. "You don't have to stay." "I know. You work tomorrow." "I know." Tasha lifted a tray of begonias. Somebody say something new. When the technician arrived, Eric remained beside him through the repair. Nora and Tasha sat in the office drinking bad coffee. At 2:30, the burner cycled cleanly. Tasha left after making Nora surrender her car keys to Eric. He drove Nora home in her station wagon while his car remained at the garden center. Neither mentioned the will. Neither mentioned Calvin, the binders, or the sandwich. At the house, Eric walked her to the door. "I can get inside by myself," Nora said. "I know." He waited anyway. Nora unlocked the door. The kitchen beyond it was dark, Ray's chair barely visible at the table. "Thank you," she said. Eric nodded. "I'll come get my car tomorrow." "After work?" "Before." "You don't have to." "I know." This time, when he drove away, he lifted one hand from the steering wheel. Nora stood in the doorway until the taillights disappeared. Then she went inside and turned on the kitchen light. Nora's knee had stiffened by morning. She discovered this when she tried to stand from the kitchen table, and her right leg refused to participate in the first attempt. On the second, it cooperated with a small internal click. She looked down at it. "Don't become interesting," she said. Ray's chair remained across from her, mute and unhelpful. At 7, Eric knocked once and entered using the key she had forgotten he still possessed. He carried 2 coffees and a paper bag darkening with grease along the bottom. "You're limping." "Good morning." "What happened?" "I own a knee. You heard it moving racks." "I irritated it." He put the coffees down. "Sit." "You've been here 9 seconds, and you've argued for 8. Nora sat mostly because a breakfast sandwich smelled better than admitting he was right. Eric removed 2 foil-wrapped bundles from the bag and gave her the one without cheese. "You remembered," she said. "You've hated cheese on eggs since I was born. I don't hate it. It's unnecessary. You called it dairy vandalism. That sounds excessive. You said it to a waitress." Nora unwrapped the sandwich. "How is your mother not banned from more restaurants?" "She tips well." Eric took Ray's chair again. This time he noticed. His body paused halfway down, but switching chairs would have made the moment larger, so he completed the movement. They ate in the gray light before sunrise. Eric looked as tired as Nora felt. A dark smudge of greenhouse soil marked the sleeve of his coat. "You should go home after you get your car," she said. "I have a customer call at 10. You slept 3 hours. So did you. I don't operate heavy machinery. You drive that station wagon. It has an excellent safety record. It has a dent shaped like a mailbox." The mailbox moved. Eric smiled into his coffee, then became serious. "Tasha said you were going to stay there all night alone." Tasha confuses concern with biography. "She was worried." "I had a phone. You weren't using it." Nora folded the sandwich wrapper into a narrow strip. "I called the repair company. You knew I could fix it. I knew you had work. That's not why you didn't call." He said it gently, which gave her less to push against. Nora flattened the foil with her thumbnail. "You were angry when you left." "I was embarrassed." "You looked angry. I'm very talented." "That you are." Eric turned his coffee cup between his palms. "After Dad died, every time you called, I thought something else had happened." Nora looked up. "The hospital called from your phone," he continued. "For a while, when your name came up, I'd get this." He pressed a fist lightly against the middle of his chest. "Then you'd ask about a screwdriver, or whether I wanted lunch. So you stopped answering. I told myself you were busy, or you wanted space, or I'd call after work when I could actually talk." He stared at the lid of his cup. Then the estate meeting got postponed, and it was like somebody canceled the next terrible thing. "I let myself off the hook. You weren't the one in the house. I know." "Do you?" He nodded, but did not claim more. Nora pushed the foil away. Fear may explain neglect. It doesn't comfort the neglected. Eric's face tightened. I know. No. You know now because I'm telling you. All right. She had expected him to defend himself. His acceptance left her holding an anger with nowhere to land. You could have called, he said after a moment. I did. I mean, when I didn't call back. Do you hear yourself? Yes. He rubbed both hands over his face. Yes, I do. The kitchen clock ticked above the stove. Outside, a bird landed on the broken maple limb and shook rain from its wings. Eric stood and gathered the wrappers. You don't have to clean up, Nora said. I know. He threw them away anyway. At the garden center, the night's losses amounted to 2 flats of impatiens and the corner of 1 tray of begonias nearest the draft. Tasha placed the damaged begonias in the employee break area. They might recover, she said. They look boiled. Hope is free, until it needs fertilizer. Luis returned from his sister's appointment with powdered donuts and a replacement ignition sensor, though the technician had already installed one. For the shelf, he explained. Does the shelf frequently repair heaters? Nora asked. The shelf remembers where things are. Nora looked toward Ray's desk. That's useful, she said. Spring opening began under a blue sky with temperatures barely above 40. Customers arrived wearing gloves and bought summer plants anyway. By 9:30, the parking lot was full. Tasha directed traffic with 2 orange flags left from the landscaping crews. Luis answered questions about raised beds and quietly redirected people who asked for Ray. Nora worked the register until the line reached the herb display. A woman placed 6 tomato plants on the counter. Can these go outside? No. When? When the nighttime temperature stays above 50. What if I cover them? They'll be cold under a sheet. My neighbor already planted hers. Your neighbor may enjoy buying tomatoes twice. The woman bought them anyway. Eric appeared at 11 carrying a cardboard tray of coffees. He had returned for his car the morning after the freeze and come back twice during the week, once to test the heater and once with dinner. Today he handed a cup to Nora and went outside to help Luis load soil. Nora did not ask how long he planned to stay. At noon, Melissa posted a message in the family group chat. Hope opening day is going well. Eric responded with a photograph of the crowded parking lot. Busy, he wrote. Paige added 3 red hearts and, Dad would love this. Nora saw the message while eating half a hot dog in the office. She put down the phone without answering. Ray would have loved the crowd. He would have stood by the entrance greeting customers by name, including names that were wrong. He would have wandered away during the busiest hour to advise someone about a diseased pear tree. He would have promised free delivery to a person who lived 40 miles outside their range. He would also have filled the front beds with red salvia. Nora looked through the window. The beds remained bare except for daffodils along the edge. Tasha, she called. Tasha appeared with an orange flag still in her hand. If this is about the line, I saw it. Plant the salvia? Where? Front beds. All of it? Don't make me repeat a poor decision. Tasha smiled. Simple colors for people driving 45 miles an hour? Apparently, they planted after closing. Eric loosened the soil. Tasha arranged the flats. Nora worked from a kneeling pad until her knee objected, then sat on an overturned bucket and directed. Luis came out with a garden fork. You're putting red in the front? For this year, Nora said. He nodded as though accepting a treaty. When they finished, the flowers formed a bright band beside the road. The red was louder than Nora preferred. Ray would have been insufferable about being right. Looks good, Eric said. It looks simple. Is that bad? Ask someone driving faster. Eric stayed for pizza in the office. Tasha ate 3 slices and took a 4th for operational purposes. Luis left early to check on his sister. The cash report showed a strong day, though not strong enough to solve everything. We did better than last year, Tasha said, because last year it rained. You can say congratulations. We're not finished with the weekend. You're exhausting. I'm consistent. On Sunday, the crowd thinned by mid-afternoon. Nora spent an hour near the native perennial display because Tasha had placed her there without admitting it was strategic. Customers asked questions Nora had not answered in years. Which plants tolerated clay? What would survive near a downspout? How could they help bees without turning the yard into a jungle? A man in his 60s held up a pot of milkweed. This says full sun, but my wife says the side yard counts. Which direction does it face? He pointed vaguely, sideways. Take your wife's phone outside at noon. If the screen is impossible to see, it's full sun. That's scientific. It's free. He bought 4. Another customer brought Nora a branch from a shrub sealed in a grocery bag. Black spots covered the leaves. My neighbor says I have to dig up the whole thing. Your neighbor enjoys emergencies. Nora showed her where to prune and what to spray. The woman took notes on the back of a receipt. Tasha watched from the register. What? Nora asked when the customer left. You should do a class. I just did. She bought $12 of fungicide, a real class. Plant problems, pruning, something. People don't attend classes at garden centers. They ask you the same 6 questions all day for free. That is not evidence of a willingness to pay. We don't have to charge the first time. Nora narrowed her eyes. You want to put 20 people in a room and let them bring sick branches? Not if you call it that. What would you call it? Keeping plants alive. That's dishonest. Some should die. Tasha wrote something on the back of the register tape. What about before you replace it? Nora disliked how much she liked the name. I'll think about it. That means yes. It means I'll think about it. Do it loudly. I need a date for the flyer. The attorney called Monday afternoon while Nora was sorting invoices. The appraiser had completed the inventory review, but the equipment loan release still needed to be processed. The probate calendar was crowded. It could be another 6 to 8 weeks before the estate was ready for final discussion. I'm sorry, the attorney said. Is there something I should be doing? No. Keep records of business transactions, which you're already doing. Pay ordinary expenses. Don't distribute any of Ray's personal assets yet. Nora glanced at the brown glasses on the desk and the green travel mug above the filing cabinet. All right, I know the children are eager for clarity. The phrase was polite enough to sting. They'll survive. After the call, Nora opened the family group chat. Her fingers rested above the screen. She could tell them immediately. She could wait until they asked. She could measure the days and calls as if silence were evidence in a case nobody else knew was being tried. Nora closed the chat. Then she reopened it and wrote, Attorney says 6 to 8 more weeks. Nothing needed from any of us right now. Melissa responded first. Thanks for the update. Paige added a white heart. Eric wrote, Need help with the broken tree limb Saturday? Nora looked through the office window at the red salvia, bright against the road. Yes, she answered. Bring the right screwdriver. Eric brought a chainsaw, a ladder, and 3 screwdrivers. What are the screwdrivers for? Nora asked. Moral support. The broken maple limb hung over the driveway at an angle that had looked manageable from the kitchen window. Up close, it was thicker than Eric's thigh and split near the trunk, its weight held by a strip of pale wood. You're not climbing that ladder alone, Nora said. I thought we were past questioning my competence. We're past questioning whether you own work boots. He looked up at the branch. Dad would have tied a rope to the truck and pulled. Your father believed a truck was a complete set of tools. Worked sometimes. Sometimes is how men describe damage their wives arranged to repair. Eric laughed and called a tree service. The service could come Tuesday. Eric tied a bright cloth around the area so Nora would not drive beneath it, though the limb was visible from the moon. They spent the morning cleaning the garage instead. Eric found 9 of the missing screwdrivers, 3 unopened bags of grass seed, and a coffee can containing keys to unknown locks. Ray had labeled the can Keys, which Nora considered a failure of imagination. At the back of a shelf sat a cardboard box filled with Eric's college textbooks. You want these? She asked. He opened a book on business statistics and stared at a page covered with yellow highlighting. I don't think I wanted them the first time. Your father kept everything. He threw out my baseball cards. He didn't throw them out. He stored them somewhere safe. Where? We never found out. That's throwing things out with optimism. By noon, they had cleared 1 shelving unit and filled 2 garbage bags. Eric did not ask about the will. Nora did not thank him for avoiding it. He made grilled cheese for lunch, placing a slice of cheddar on each side of her bread. This is too much cheese. It's a grilled cheese. The bread needs structural authority. You haven't changed. Nora looked at him across the stove. You say that like it's comforting. Eric flipped the sandwich. Some of it is. The tree service removed the branch Tuesday without damaging the driveway, mailbox, or house. Nora sent Eric a photograph of the empty space above her station wagon. He replied, cowards. Dad could have taken out the mailbox, too. She laughed aloud in the office. Tasha looked up from the spring schedule. Eric? Yes. You smile differently at your children. What does that mean? Nothing safe to explain. Then return to work. Tasha had already printed flyers for Before You Replace It. Nora's name appeared beneath the class title in large green letters. Nora Bell, co-owner and head grower. Nora held up the page. Head grower? You order the plants. That's not growing. You know how to grow them. That's not the same either. Customers don't want a class from head person who knows things. Why is my name this large? So people see it. They know Bell is on the sign. They think Bell is Ray. Nora lowered the flyer. Tasha rearranged pens in the cup beside the register. You know they do. Yes. So, we teach them. Nora had intended the first class to last 30 minutes. It lasted an hour and 20. 11 people attended, 9 carrying diseased or unhappy plant samples in plastic bags. One man arrived with an entire potted boxwood and dropped soil across the floor. This is a class, not urgent care, Nora told him. It was easier than cutting a branch. It was not easier for the boxwood. She began with roots. People always blamed leaves because leaves were visible, but most trouble started lower down, with water, soil, compaction, or a pot too small for what the plant had become. Nora demonstrated how to loosen circling roots and how to tell dry soil from soil that only looked dry on top. A woman named Beverly raised her hand for every question and answered half of them herself. My lilac hasn't bloomed in 3 years, she said. Does it get sun? Plenty. When do you prune? Fall, when I have time. You're cutting off next spring's flowers. Beverly frowned. My brother-in-law said lilacs bloom on new growth. Your brother-in-law is wrong. He's a landscape architect. He can be wrong professionally. The class laughed. Beverly bought a pair of pruners. Afterward, customers stayed to shop and continued asking Nora questions. Sales for the afternoon were nearly double an ordinary Thursday, though some of that came from the boxwood man purchasing a larger pot out of guilt. Tasha leaned into the office. Same time next month? No. 2 weeks? Monthly. I heard 2 weeks. Your hearing is why you work with flowers. The second class filled all 20 folding chairs. Nora taught pruning using branches Louise collected from the property. She showed good cuts, bad cuts, and the smooth, flat wound Ray had once made on a crabapple because he disliked the shape of a branch. Who did that one? Someone asked. A man with strong opinions and poor timing. She did not say Ray's name. She did not need to. The garden center's days settled into a rhythm that did not feel settled. Bills arrived, plants sold. Others stretched, yellowed, or died. Tasha moved the native perennials into a more visible row and added small signs explaining what each plant tolerated. Luis repaired a section of shade cloth with material left from the landscaping trailers. Nora taught, ordered, argued, and went home to rooms that still seemed surprised to see only her. Melissa called twice in May. The first time she needed Nora's date of birth for an insurance form she had no business completing. The second time, she asked whether the attorney had given a firmer probate date. Not yet, Nora said. Okay, no pressure. You called me. I mean, no pressure on you. How is work? Melissa sounded startled, then spent 10 minutes describing a seller who wanted to leave 6 mounted fish on the living room wall during showings. It's part of the home's story, Melissa said. The story is that fish entered and did not leave. That's what I said. For a little while, they sounded like themselves. Before hanging up, Melissa said, You're not still thinking about selling more equipment, are you? The little bridge between them collapsed so quietly that Melissa may not have noticed. There isn't much more to sell. I'm only asking. I know. Paige's messages came in clusters. She sent a photograph of a sunset, then vanished for 8 days. She asked how Nora was sleeping, but when Nora answered honestly, badly, Paige responded the next afternoon with a link to herbal tea. Nora watched Paige's restaurant relationship progress through photographs. Graham had a narrow hand, wore a silver watch, and apparently ate only meals arranged on square white plates. Nora knew no more about him than she had before Ray died. She had not realized how easily a family could mistake information for intimacy. On the morning Nora turned 70, she woke at 5:40 to the sound of rain against the bedroom window. Ray had always given her birthday presents too early. He could not tolerate hiding them. One year, he bought her a bracelet in June for an August birthday and handed it over in the store parking lot because, he said, the bag might wrinkle. Nora lay still, listening to rain and the house. At 6:15, the pharmacy sent an automated birthday greeting with a coupon for vitamins. At 7, Diane texted, 70 is nothing. I've painted over worse. Nora answered with a laughing face. No messages appeared in the family group chat. She went to work. Tasha was dealing with a delivery shortage, and Luis had driven to Cincinnati for replacement greenhouse panels. Neither knew the date. Nora had never celebrated birthdays at work beyond a grocery store cake in the break room, and it felt childish to announce her own. At 10, a florist delivered an arrangement of pink lilies in a glass cube. The card read, "Happy birthday, Mom. Love, Melissa." The delivery receipt was tucked beneath the vase. Melissa's assistant had placed the order. Nora knew this because the customer name said Jenna Klein for Melissa Bell Harper. She removed the receipt before Tasha could see it. "Pretty," Tasha said. "They're lilies. I recognize the species. They smell like a funeral home. I was avoiding that." Nora placed them on the filing cabinet beneath Ray's green mug. Melissa did not call. At lunch, Nora drove to the grocery store for printer paper and walked past a display of cupcakes. She chose one with white frosting and yellow sugar sprinkles. At the self-checkout, the machine refused to recognize the cupcake's barcode. An attendant came over. "Celebrating?" she asked. "Printer paper." The woman laughed as if Nora had made a joke. Back at the garden center, Nora closed the office door and peeled the plastic lid from the cupcake. Some frosting came away with it. She ate with a wooden stir stick because the break room forks were in the dishwasher. The cupcake was too sweet. She finished it anyway. At 4, Paige sent a picture of Graham holding 2 cocktails on a restaurant patio. Nora pressed the heart beneath it. At 6, she turned off the front sign and drove home with the lilies belted into the passenger seat so the vase would not tip. Diane called while Nora was heating soup. "Did your offspring perform?" "They're adults, not circus seals." That wasn't an answer. "Melissa sent flowers." "Good." Nora opened the silverware drawer. Her assistant sent flowers. "Oh, don't say ah." "I said oh. It's the same family." Diane wished her happy birthday, sang 3 intentionally terrible notes, and invited her to dinner Saturday. Nora accepted. At 10:46, Eric called. She let it ring twice before answering. "Happy birthday," he said, breathless. "I'm sorry. I had the date in my phone for next Thursday. It has been the same date your entire life." "I know. The calendar transferred it wrong. Your phone rescheduled my birth? That sounds bad when you say it. How does it sound when you say it? Also bad." She heard traffic behind him. "Are you driving?" I pulled over. "Why?" "Because I didn't want to call you while driving. You called Melissa while driving when her marriage ended. That conversation required forward motion." Nora almost smiled. "Go home. Can I take you to dinner tomorrow?" "I work tomorrow." "After?" "We'll see." "Mom?" "What?" "I'm sorry." This time, it was not about the calendar. Nora looked at the vase of lilies on the kitchen counter. Several pink petals had opened during the day, exposing dark orange pollen. "Call me in the morning," she said. "I will." He did, at 7:12. Paige remembered at 9:37 that evening. Her message began, "I am the worst daughter alive," and continued for 6 paragraphs. Nora read every word, then placed the phone face down beside Ray's empty chair. For once, she did not answer immediately. Paige called the next morning at 6:50, which meant she had either slept badly or not at all. Nora was in the kitchen cutting a brown spot from an apple. "Please don't say it," Paige began. "Say what? That I forgot?" "You did. I know. I feel horrible." Nora sliced the apple into quarters. "I had your birthday in my calendar," Paige said. "But I changed phones, and Graham surprised me with this overnight thing, and for some reason I thought it was next week. Your brother's phone also moved my birth." "Oh, God." Eric forgot too. Nora regretted giving her the information. Paige's relief was small but audible. "He called last night. I was going to call last night, but it was late, and I thought you might be asleep." "I wasn't." "I'm sorry." Nora carried the apple to the table. The lilies had begun dropping pollen onto the counter. Dark orange dust marked the white laminate beneath them. "Did you have a good day?" Paige asked. "I worked." "Did anyone do anything?" Diane called. "Did Melissa send something?" "Flowers?" Paige exhaled. "Good. I'm glad you weren't alone." Nora looked at Ray's chair. "You keep saying things you don't know. What does that mean? Flowers are not company." "I know that." "Do you?" Paige went quiet. Nora bit into the apple. It was soft and nearly tasteless. "I said, I'm sorry, Paige whispered. You want me to tell you it didn't matter? No, I don't. You do. You want to feel like the kind of daughter who would never forget without having to sit with the fact that you did. That's cruel. It might have been. Nora let the possibility stand. I'm not trying to punish you, she said. It feels like you are. Discomfort is not always punishment, Paige. What do you want me to do? There was desperation in the question, and beneath it, irritation. Paige liked emotions that could be translated into tasks. Send tea. Add a white heart. Apologize 6 paragraphs long. Call me when nothing has happened, Nora said. What? When there's no birthday, no funeral, no news from the attorney. Call because it's Tuesday. I do call. You send pictures. That's how people stay connected now. It's how people prove they're alive. Paige inhaled sharply. For a moment, Nora thought she would hang up. Instead, she said, Okay. Okay, what? I'll call Tuesday. Nora almost told her not to make it an appointment. She stopped. Paige was trying, even if her trying required instructions. All right, Nora said. After they ended the call, Nora moved the lilies to the laundry room. Their smell had filled the kitchen overnight. Eric took her to dinner at a steakhouse beside the interstate, where the menus were large enough to shelter beneath. He arrived with a gift in a paper bag. If this is a kitchen appliance, I'm leaving. It's not. Lotion? No. Anything scented lavender? I remembered your birthday one day late, not your personality. Inside the bag was a compact, rechargeable work light. It folded flat, had a magnetic base, and could hang from a hook. Nora turned it over in her hands. This is practical. I panicked. I like it. I know. He had bought one for Ray the previous Christmas. Ray used it twice, then misplaced it. Luis later found it attached beneath the landscaping truck, where it had survived a full winter. Eric ordered prime rib. Nora ordered salmon and ignored his expression. You came to a steakhouse for fish, he said. I came because you chose the restaurant. You like steak. I also like fish. Since when? Before you were born. It was in the paperwork. He smiled, but the smile faded when the server left. Are you still angry? Yes. About the birthday or everything? Must I organize it for you? No. They sat through a stretch of restaurant noise. Forks striking plates, ice shifting in glasses, a birthday song beginning near the bar. A server carried a slice of chocolate cake with a candle toward a table of adults wearing paper hats. Eric followed Nora's gaze. I thought about telling them. I would have left through the kitchen. That's why I didn't. The salmon arrived over rice with asparagus lined up like green pencils. Eric's prime rib covered most of his plate. He cut into it. Are you really keeping the garden center for now? What does for now mean? It means I'm 70. The business is changing. I'm not pretending I know what I want at 80. He nodded. Nora waited for him to mention value, sale, or the estate. He did not. The house is getting too large, she said. Eric looked up quickly. You want to move? I said it's large. You've lived there 32 years. That's not a measurement. Where would you go? I don't know. The urgency in his voice surprised her. I'm not packing tonight. I know. If you sell, there's a lot of stuff. Your father's keys alone require a specialist. I can help. You have helped. He looked down at his plate, accepting the compliment as carefully as if it might break. Paige called Tuesday. She called at 8:15 in the evening and opened with, Nothing happened. Nora was folding towels in the living room. That sounds ominous. I mean, there's no occasion. I'm calling because it's Tuesday. Very natural. I'm trying, Mom. I know. They talked for 12 minutes. Graham worked in medical device sales and had an apartment with no books. Paige disliked the apartment but liked Graham, which Nora considered a more hopeful arrangement than the reverse. Paige asked about the classes at the garden center. Nora told her about the boxwood man. Are you enjoying it? Paige asked. Teaching? Yes. Nora folded a hand towel, aligned its corners, and set it on the stack. I think so. You sound surprised. I spent years answering questions one person at a time. It never occurred to me to arrange chairs. Dad liked being the one out front. The sentence landed without accusation. That made it harder to dismiss. Yes, Nora said. He did. Paige called the next Tuesday too. On the third Tuesday, she forgot. Nora did not remind her. The early summer heat arrived suddenly. Annual sales slowed, while Tasha's native perennial section continued moving. Customers returned to report that milkweed, coneflower, and bee balm were alive despite their efforts. Before you replace. It became a twice-monthly class through a process Nora blamed on Tasha. Luis began attending from the back, correcting Nora whenever she discussed irrigation. If water's running out the bottom, that means enough, Nora told the group. Unless soil pulled away from the pot, Luis said. Then water runs around. Nora turned toward him. Would you like a chair at the front? No, then become less audible. After class, 3 people followed Luis into the irrigation aisle. The following week, Tasha proposed a Saturday workshop called Fix What You Have. Absolutely not, Luis said. Nora looked at the handwritten proposal. Basic hose repair, drip lines, sharpening tools. People shouldn't sharpen tools because of a class. Why? They will become confident. Tasha smiled. That's the idea. That's the danger. They scheduled it for June. The workshop drew 14 adults, most carrying broken pruners, leaking hose fittings, or tools with edges like spoons. Luis taught reluctantly and well. He made each person perform the repair rather than watching him do it. When a woman tried to hand him her shears, he stepped back. Your hands, he said. I brought mine for demonstration. Nora watched from the register. The garden center sounded different now. Not busier exactly, more inhabited. At closing, Tasha handed her the sales report. Workshops sell tools. People came with tools. They bought better ones after Luis insulted them. I gave facts, Luis said. You told a man his pruning saw was a butter knife with anger. It was. The business was not suddenly prosperous. The retail operation carried old obligations. The greenhouses required repairs. And closing landscaping had removed revenue as well as losses. Yet the weekly cash flow no longer lurched quite so violently. Nora could see where money entered and where it went. She also saw the unused Western acres differently. They had once stored landscaping materials there, gravel, mulch, stone, spare equipment. Now weeds grew around empty bins and property taxes arrived whether the land earned anything or not. Nora walked the boundary with Luis one hot afternoon. The western strip had separate road access and no greenhouses. A shallow drainage ditch divided most of it from the retail property. You thinking of selling? He asked. Thinking is free. Melissa could tell you the value. Nora stopped. Luis lifted his hands. I said could, not should. She'd treat the whole property as available, then call somebody else. Nora looked back toward the greenhouses. The roofs flashed white in the sun. Beyond them stood the small cottage Bells had once rented to a seasonal manager. It had been empty for 5 years and currently held broken display racks, bags of old labels, and a family of mice with established residency. What about the cottage? She asked. What about it? How bad is it? Luis considered. As housing or storage? Housing. Bad. Repairable. Everything is repairable. That isn't a price. No. She walked on. Nora contacted a commercial appraiser from another county. She did not tell Melissa. The appraisal would cost money and commit her to nothing. The report had not yet arrived when the probate attorney called. We finally have a date, she said. Nora sat behind Ray's desk, the phone pressed to her ear. The estate review could take place the following Thursday at 10. All 3 children had received formal notice. The equipment loan release was complete, the business valuation finished, and the remaining accounts had been reconciled. Do you expect problems? Nora asked. Nothing unusual. Nora almost laughed. Nothing about the last 3 months had felt unusual on paper. Within 9 minutes of the call ending, Melissa phoned. Did she call you? Melissa asked. Yes. Thursday at 10, that is what she said. I'll clear my schedule. 2 minutes after they hung up, Paige called. Mom, I got something from the attorney. I know. Are you okay? I was before the mail arrived. I mean, about the meeting. I understand what you mean. Eric called last. He asked whether Nora wanted him to pick her up Thursday morning. I own a car, she said. I know. You don't need to escort me? I know that too. Nora looked at the calendar on the wall. 3 calls in less than half an hour. For 6 to 8 weeks, Tuesdays had come and gone with the occasional heart, article, apology, or photograph. Now the date existed, and so did she. I'll meet you there, she told him. Afterward, Nora crossed Thursday in red ink. Then she sat very still in Ray's office, listening as Tasha and Luis laughed about something near the front register. Tasha closed the office door behind her. You all right? I have received a date, Nora said. For what? The estate meeting. Tasha's eyes moved toward the red mark on the calendar. Ah, there it is again. What? That noise everyone makes before asking an intrusive question. I wasn't going to ask. You were. I was going to ask if you want Thursday off. Nora looked at the desk. The brown glasses remained beside the telephone, their lenses dusty. Ray's green travel mug sat above the filing cabinet with a smear of dried mud near the base. I'll be back after lunch. You don't have to be. I know, Tasha nodded. I'll put you on the schedule as threatening to return. For the next week, the children called often enough that Nora no longer had to wonder whether her phone worked. Melissa wanted to confirm the attorney's address, though she had already received it in writing. Paige asked what people wore to an estate review. Eric called about parking. There's a lot behind the building, Nora said. Is it free? Do you think the attorney validates? I'm asking because downtown parking is terrible. You're planning for a 15-yard walk. I'm making conversation. Nora recognized the effort and allowed it. Melissa called again Tuesday evening. Do you know how long the meeting will be? No. I have a closing at 3, then leave by 2. I'm trying to plan lunch. Nora stood at the kitchen sink, picking orange pollen from the countertop with a damp paper towel. The lilies were gone, but their evidence persisted. Melissa, are you asking me to make sandwiches? No. Of course not. You use the voice. What voice? The one you used in college when you came home with laundry and said you wondered whether I planned to run a load. I was making conversation. That phrase is having a week. Melissa laughed despite herself. I can bring lunch, bring nothing. We could go somewhere after. Nora looked at Ray's empty chair. We'll see. The commercial appraisal for the Western Acres arrived Wednesday. Nora opened it at the garden center with Tasha and Luis present. The value was respectable, not transformative. After taxes, fees, and paying down business debt, a sale would leave enough to repair the cottage and strengthen the operating reserve. It would not make anyone rich. It would make several problems smaller. Luis read the repair estimate Nora had asked him to prepare. This cottage number is optimistic, he said. You wrote it. I was in a hopeful mood. What did you leave out? Kitchen cabinets. It has cabinets. It has wood attached to walls. Tasha studied the land report. You could sell the western strip and keep the road frontage for bells. That's the idea. Melissa will know eventually. I know. She'll be upset you didn't use her. I know that too. Tasha placed the report on Ray's desk. You're very informed. It's exhausting. Nora carried the appraisal home in her handbag. She did not hide it, but she put it in the desk drawer beneath a stack of utility bills. The distinction mattered to her, if nobody else. Thursday morning, she dressed in navy trousers and a cream blouse. She tried Ray's favorite pearl earrings, removed them, then put them back on. In the bathroom mirror, she looked like a woman attending a bank meeting. She preferred that to looking like a widow attending the distribution of her husband's remains and numbers. At 9:20, Eric pulled into the driveway. Nora watched from the front window as he got out, saw her station wagon, and realized she had not left without him. He came to the door carrying 2 coffees. I said I'd meet you there. I know. This is not an escort. What is it? Coincidental coffee. He had brought hers with no sweetener. They drove separately. The attorney's office occupied the second floor of a former insurance building near the courthouse. The carpet in the waiting room was patterned with gray squares that made Nora feel she had stepped inside graph paper. Melissa was already there. She wore a pale blue suit and held a leather folder on her lap. She stood when Nora entered. You look nice. So do you. Melissa kissed her cheek. Her perfume was the same expensive citrus Nora remembered from the hospital. Paige arrived 3 minutes late, carrying a canvas bag and apologizing to everyone, including the receptionist. She hugged Nora too long. I missed you, Paige whispered. Nora rested a hand between her shoulders. You know where I am? Paige released her. The attorney, Rebecca Shaw, invited them into a conference room with a long table and 5 identical water bottles arranged at each seat. Rebecca was in her late 50s, with silver-streaked hair and a voice that remained calm without becoming soothing. Nora appreciated that. This is not a formal reading, Rebecca explained after they sat. You've all received copies of the relevant documents. Today is for reviewing the inventory explaining the distributions and answering questions before we moved toward closing the estate. Melissa uncapped a pen. Eric did not touch his water. Paige leaned toward Nora, their sleeves almost touching. Rebecca began with debts and expenses. The funeral costs had been paid. Ray's personal credit card balance was small. The equipment loan guarantee had been released after the skid steer and trailer loans were satisfied. The business valuation reflected the closing of landscaping and the current retail operation. Melissa wrote figures in the margin of her copy. Rebecca continued. The life insurance policy named Nora. 2 modest investment accounts formed the principal cash assets of the estate. After expenses, each child would receive $8,000 under Ray's specific bequests. Paige blinked. Melissa's pen stopped. Eric looked at Nora, then away. Rebecca explained the personal gifts. Melissa received Ray's mother's walnut sewing cabinet, which had stood in the upstairs hall for years. Eric received Ray's red metal tool chest and its contents. Paige received the turntable and record collection. "It still exists?" Paige asked. "It's in the basement," Nora said. "I thought Dad sold it. He threatened to, whenever you borrowed records. I returned them." Nora looked at her. "Most of them," Paige amended. Rebecca continued. Ray's truck and remaining business equipment belonged to Bell's garden center rather than to him individually. Nora owned 60% of the company. Ray's 40% interest passed to Nora under the residuary clause. "The real property is similar," Rebecca said. The primary garden center acreage and residence were held jointly by Raymond and Nora with survivorship rights. They are not divided among the children through probate. Melissa's face remained composed, but the color had changed beneath her makeup. "So, the land isn't part of the estate?" she asked. "Correct. None of it?" "Correct. And Dad's business share goes entirely to Mom. That is what the will directs." Melissa glanced at Nora. "Did you know?" "I knew how we owned the business. I mean, did you know what the will said?" "Yes." "How long?" "Ray and I made our wills at the same time." Paige turned toward her. "You knew before the funeral?" "Your father and I discussed it when we signed them." "You let us sit here thinking," Rebecca raised one hand, not sharply. "There is a common misconception that a will divides everything a person used or helped build. Much of a married couple's property may already pass by title or contractual designation. The purpose of this meeting is to make those distinctions clear." "I understand the distinction," Melissa said. Her tone suggested she resented needing it explained. Rebecca reviewed the remaining inventory. Ray's clothing and ordinary household goods passed to Nora. Several named charitable gifts were small. $500 to the Church Garden Committee, $500 to the County Horticultural Scholarship Fund. Ray had left his fishing gear to Luis. Nora had forgotten that. "Luis?" Eric asked. "He and your father fished together," Nora said. "I didn't know Dad fished. He mostly complained near water." Rebecca almost smiled. When the review ended, she asked for questions. Paige wanted to know when she could take the turntable. Rebecca said after the estate closed, though Nora could make it available sooner if documented. Eric asked whether the tool chest included tools belonging to the business. Nora said she and Luis would separate anything purchased by Bells. Melissa looked down at her notes. "How was the business valued?" she asked. Rebecca explained the method: physical assets, current liabilities, recent earnings, and the closing of the landscaping operation. Melissa asked whether selling the equipment before valuation reduced the figure. "The sale proceeds and satisfied loans were both included," Rebecca said. "But if the division had remained operational, the company might have been valued higher. It also might have continued losing money," Nora said. Melissa's pen tapped once against the folder. "I'm asking Rebecca," Rebecca answered carefully. "The valuation reflects the business as it currently exists. Since Ray's share passes to Nora, the figure does not change the children's specific cash bequests. In other words," Eric said, "it doesn't affect us." Melissa looked at him. "I didn't say it did. You didn't have to." Nora nearly laughed at hearing her own words in his mouth. She did not. Rebecca outlined the final signatures and estimated closing within a month. Everyone stood. Melissa gathered her papers with precise movements. Paige slipped her unopened water bottle into her canvas bag. In the waiting room, the children hovered as though the meeting had ended too soon. "Lunch?" Melissa asked. Nora had not planned to invite them home. She had intended to return to the garden center. where Tasha would ask no questions she had not earned the right to ask. Then Paige said, "I don't understand why Dad never told us." "Told you what?" Eric asked. "That we weren't really inheriting anything. We are. You know what I mean." "No," Nora said. "That phrase is retired." Paige flushed. Nora looked at all three of them, Melissa with her leather folder, Eric holding 2 empty coffee cups because he had not found a trash can, Paige clutching a bag containing a water bottle she had not paid for. "Come to the house," Nora said. "I have food." Melissa checked the time. "I can stay until 1:30. "How generous." "Mom, I'll see you there." At the house, Nora set out chicken salad, bread, sliced tomatoes, and the last container of potato salad from the freezer. They took their old places without discussing it. Eric sat in Ray's chair. Paige sat beside Nora. Melissa placed her folder on the floor where no one could spill on it. For several minutes they assembled sandwiches and talked about the attorney's carpet. Then Melissa said, "What are you planning to do with the property?" Nora placed the lid back on the chicken salad. "There it is. I'm asking because this affects your future. My future has been happening while you waited for a meeting." Melissa's face hardened. "That's not fair. You should copyright that." "It's popular, too." Paige put down her fork. "Can we not fight?" "We haven't begun," Nora said. She looked at the 3 adults she had fed, defended, rescued, and loved through every version of themselves. "I didn't ask you here to discuss $8,000 or a sewing cabinet. I asked you here because I want to know why the date of that meeting brought all 3 of you back to life." Melissa leaned back as if Nora had reached across the table. "That's what this is about? What did you think it was about?" "I didn't know there was an it." "You called every morning for 3 weeks. I was checking on you. Then the will was delayed, and I stopped requiring checks." Melissa's mouth tightened. "My work got busy. Eric's work got busy. Paige had a crazy week. The entire economy recovered the same Monday." Eric lowered his eyes. Paige picked at the crust of her sandwich. "I thought you wanted space." "Why?" "You sounded irritated when we called." "I was grieving. You kept saying you were fine." "What was I supposed to say?" "The truth." Nora looked at her. "You sent me a link to tea when I told you I couldn't sleep." Paige's face colored. "I was trying to help. You were trying to answer. That isn't always the same." Melissa placed both palms on the table. "You're making everything we did sound selfish. I haven't mentioned the fireproof box, land values, the truck, or Paige reserving the turntable." "I did not reserve it," Paige said. "Dad promised it to me. Apparently he did. So why bring it up?" "Because before his funeral flowers wilted, all 3 of you were identifying pieces of his life you might want." "That's normal," Melissa said. "People have to deal with practical things. People, families. The family was not a set of practical things. No one said it was. You behaved as if I were a hallway between your father and whatever he left." Melissa's chair scraped the floor as she shifted. "That is deeply unfair." Nora saw the hurt before Melissa covered it with anger. For 1 weak second, she wanted to take back the sentence. Instead, she reached for her water and found the glass empty. Eric stood, filled it at the sink, and returned it without speaking. Melissa watched him. "Are you just going to sit there?" "Yes. You had questions too." "I did." "You asked about the truck. I did that too." "Then why are you acting like this is about me?" "I'm not. You always do this. You create a mess and then become the quiet, reasonable one, while I get blamed for cleaning it up." Eric's face changed. "What mess did I create?" "Dad's funeral, for one." "Who made the calls? Who handled the church? Who found the insurance forms?" "Mom handled the insurance. She shouldn't have had to. I didn't ask you to do everything. That's why I had to." Nora closed her eyes briefly. "Ray used to say their children could turn a weather report into a trial about 1996. This is not about the funeral arrangements," she said. "It's about whatever you decide it's about," Melissa replied. "That's the problem. You never tell anyone what you need, then you judge us for not guessing." The accusation landed cleanly because it contained truth. Nora looked down at the table. A tomato seed clung to her plate. "I could have asked more plainly," she said. Melissa blinked, unprepared for the concession. "I could have said I was frightened at night," Nora continued. "I could have told you that I walked into the laundry room and forgot why I was there because your father's shirt was hanging over the dryer. I could have said I needed one of you to call and talk about something other than death or money. Then why didn't you? Paige asked softly. Because I was the one whose husband died. The room went still. Nora's voice remained level. Because every morning I got out of bed, fed myself, opened a business, answered condolences, dealt with lawyers, and came home to a house where the loudest sound was the refrigerator. I did not have the energy to design a better way for my children to care about me. Paige's eyes filled. Nora did not stop. You say I sounded fine. I sounded fine when Eric's furnace failed, and I lent him $6,000 without telling Ray how worried I was. I sounded fine when Melissa's first marriage ended and she called me every night for 2 months. I sounded fine when Paige decided at 35 that she had chosen the wrong career and needed to move home for half a year. It was 4 months, Paige whispered. That is not the important number. You always told us you wanted to help, Melissa said. I did. So now there's a bill? No, there's a difference between a bill and a memory. Melissa looked away. Through the kitchen window, sunlight struck the fresh cut on the maple where the broken limb had been removed. The exposed wood was pale against the dark bark. Paige wiped beneath one eye with the side of her finger. You make it sound like we only called because we thought we were getting money. Nora considered lying. I think you loved your father, she said. I think you were frightened. I think handling his things gave you something solid to do. I also think all of you expected money, and when the meeting disappeared, some part of your urgency disappeared with it. Dad talked about bells as our legacy, Melissa said. Your father talked about many things as if a speech made them true. He said it would all be ours someday. Someday after when? Melissa stared at her. The garden center was our livelihood, Nora said. It remains mine. Your father's death did not turn my half into a waiting period. No one wants you to have nothing. How reassuring. I mean it. We thought the business and land would be divided after you were taken care of. Taken care of by whom? The estate. The estate is not a person. Melissa pushed her plate away. You're twisting everything. No, I'm refusing the passive voice. Eric made a sound that might have been a laugh and turned it into a cough. Melissa looked at him. You've been spending a lot of time here. Did you know what the will said? No. Did Mom tell you about the business? She showed me records after I accused her of destroying Dad's legacy. When? After the equipment sale. So the two of you have had time to work this out. We haven't worked it out, Nora said. Eric nodded. We're working. Paige looked between them. Why didn't either of you tell us? Tell you what? Eric asked. That Mom knows her own business? That she was upset. She told us. Not like this. She said we stopped calling. Melissa's eyes narrowed. When? The day I came here angry. And you didn't think to mention it? I thought calling her might be a start. Melissa laughed without humor. Congratulations. You found the simple assignment. It wasn't simple. It was a phone call. Then why didn't you do it? Nora set her glass down. Enough. They went quiet again, but the quiet had changed. It no longer felt like absence. It felt crowded with things finally named. Melissa picked up her napkin, folded it once, and laid it beside her plate. What are you going to do with the property? She asked. Why do you need to know today? Because I'm your daughter, not my broker, Melissa flinched. Nora wished she had chosen gentler words, and knew gentler words would not have held. I had the Western Acres appraised, she said. I may sell that strip. You already had an appraisal? Yes. By whom? A commercial appraiser from Dayton. You paid someone from Dayton when I could have done it? I wanted an appraisal, not a family discussion disguised as a service. Melissa stood. Do you know how insulting that is? I know how it sounds. No, you don't. I have spent 20 years building a career. You trust Tasha to run the business. You trust Luis with repairs. You call some stranger from Dayton about land. But when it comes to me, suddenly accepting help means surrendering control. Your help has hooks. So does everyone's. Perhaps. Yours are harder for me to remove. Melissa picked up her folder from the floor. Paige reached for her wrist. Don't leave. I have a closing. You said 3. I need to prepare. Nora remained seated. The Western Strip is not being listed yet. If I decide to sell, I will tell you before it becomes public. Melissa looked at her. As a courtesy? As my daughter. That's convenient when you need the word. She walked out. The front door closed with care, which was worse than a slam. Paige stared after her. You could have asked her. I could have. She would have done a good job. That was not my concern. You punish people in such quiet ways. Nora looked at her youngest child. Selling my own land through someone else is not punishment. It is to Melissa. Then Melissa has confused access with love. Paige stood too. She began gathering plates, stacking them unevenly. Leave those, Nora said. I'm helping. You're angry. I can be both. That surprised Nora into silence. Paige carried the plates to the sink. I really did think you wanted space. I know. And maybe I didn't call because every time I heard your voice, I pictured Dad in that greenhouse. Maybe I sent pictures because pictures didn't ask anything back. Nora watched her. Paige turned from the sink. Her face was wet now, but her voice held. You're not the only one who lost him. No. You act like our grief is greedy because it noticed his things. Not greedy? Impatient? I don't know the difference. Neither did I at first. Paige wiped her cheek. And you knew the whole time we weren't getting the land. Yes, you could have told us. You did not ask what the will said. You asked when you would hear it. Paige's mouth opened, then closed. That is a lawyer's answer, she said. No, it is a widow's answer. I had been explaining everything to everyone since the hospital. I was tired of being asked for the next piece. Paige took her canvas bag from the chair. Graham is waiting for me. Of course, that sounded mean. It was. Paige nodded slowly. At least you admit it. She left without a hug. Eric remained in Ray's chair. The kitchen looked plundered after lunch. Open containers, crumbs, 4 glasses, a spoon on the floor. You need to go too? Nora asked. No. You don't have to take a side. I'm not. It will look like you are. I know. He began covering the chicken salad. Nora stood at the sink with both hands gripping the counter. Her anger had held her upright through the conversation. Now it drained so quickly that she felt hollowed out. That went well, Eric said. A laugh escaped her, broken in the middle. Then she began to cry, not gracefully. Her shoulders shook. She pressed the heel of one hand against her mouth, furious at the sound. Eric did not touch her. He stood beside the refrigerator holding the chicken salad, waiting. I didn't want their money, Nora said. I know. I wanted them to call. I know. Stop saying you know. All right. She cried until the first wave passed. Eric put the chicken salad away, found a clean towel, and handed it to her because the tissues were in the living room. Nora wiped her face. I love them, she said. I know that too. This time, she let him say it. They cleaned the kitchen without resolving anything. Eric washed, Nora dried. He put the bowls in the wrong cabinet, and she moved them after he turned away. When only the glasses remained, he said, Melissa will call. Because you'll tell her to? No. Then how do you know? She left her folder. It lay beneath the table where she had set it, pale leather against the dark floor. Nora looked at it. Eric dried his hands. Want me to take it? No. You sure? Yes. After he left, Nora placed the folder on the hall table by the front door. Melissa returned at 7:18. Nora watched through the window as her daughter sat in the car for nearly a minute before coming inside. Melissa took the folder, but did not leave immediately. I made my closing, she said. I assumed. The sellers kept the fish. Good for the fish. Melissa looked toward the kitchen. Were you serious about selling the Western Strip? Yes. And the house? I don't know. What will happen to Bells? I don't know that either. Melissa's eyes flashed. How can you make decisions if you don't know the end? I can decide the next thing. That's not how I live. I know. For one second, they almost smiled. Then Melissa hugged the folder against her chest. I did call because of the estate meeting, she said. Nora waited. But not only because of that. I know. That doesn't excuse it. No. Melissa nodded once. It was not an apology, but it was the first thing she had offered all day that did not defend itself. She opened the door. Melissa. Her daughter turned. I'm not asking you to prove you love me. What are you asking? Don't make me useful before I'm worth your time. Melissa looked as if Nora had struck something she had been protecting. Then she left, carrying the folder carefully beneath one arm. The house seemed larger after Melissa left. Nora walked through it, turning off lights nobody had turned on. The upstairs hall held Ray's mother's sewing cabinet, a narrow walnut piece with 6 shallow drawers. Melissa had once hidden cigarettes in the bottom drawer and blamed the smell on mothballs. In the basement, the turntable sat beneath a vinyl cover beside 4 milk crates of records. The red metal tool chest stood against the garage wall. its drawers labeled sockets, wrenches, electrical, and misc, which contained everything from hose clamps to a hotel sewing kit. Nora had spent months thinking about what her children wanted from Ray. Standing among the objects, she wondered whether Ray had chosen them, because each child had once been happy nearby. Melissa learned to sew at the cabinet. Eric followed Ray around the garage. Paige danced in the basement while records skipped beneath her feet. Memory and possession were not enemies. They had simply arrived in the same room at a bad time. The following morning, Nora carried the commercial appraisal into the garden center. Tasha read Nora's face before she saw the report. Kitchen meeting? How do you know? You have the expression. What expression? Like somebody returned a plant after killing it. Luis looked up from a carton of irrigation fittings. Family? Yes. He nodded. Nora pointed at him. Charge him $1 every time. I'll retire, Tasha said. They met in the office after opening. Nora laid out the Western acreage appraisal and Luis's optimistic cottage estimate. She had spent half the night adding less optimistic numbers. I intend to sell the Western Strip, she said. Pay the remaining business debt, repair the cottage, build a reserve. Tasha looked at the plan. And the house? Eventually sell it. You'd live in the cottage? If it stops being a mouse democracy. Luis unfolded the repair estimate. Roof first. You said plumbing first. I visited yesterday. Without telling me, the roof told me. Tasha remained quiet. Nora noticed. What? If you're selling land and moving, people will think Bell's is next. People already think Bell's is becoming a pharmacy. I don't mean people. Luis set down the estimate. Nora looked from one to the other. They had spent months trusting her decisions while knowing every decision belonged to someone who could one day tire, become ill, or sell. I don't plan to close, she said. Plan is not future, Luis replied. That is almost philosophical. It is a question. Nora leaned back in Ray's chair. She had not considered the garden center beyond her own endurance. Ray had assumed legacy would settle itself through blood. Nora no longer shared the assumption, but she had not replaced it with anything. What would you want? She asked. Tasha gave a short laugh. That's a dangerous question. I asked it. A path to ownership. The answer came without hesitation. Luis looked at her. You rehearsed? For 6 years. Nora waited for offense and felt none. Only surprise, followed by the practical click of a problem becoming visible. You can't afford Bell's, she said. Tasha's face closed. I didn't say no. I said you can't afford it now. Luis sat down. They spent an hour discussing something none of them was ready to promise. Nora would speak with her accountant. Tasha and Luis would review their finances privately. Any purchase would happen gradually, at fair value, with Nora retaining control and income during the transition. No one would receive the business as a reward for kindness, and no one would lose it because Nora's children had stopped calling. This could take years, Nora said. Plants are slow, Luis replied. Bills are not. We know bills, Tasha said. The accountant advised caution, then became interested when Nora refused to be discouraged by the first 6 complications. An attorney drafted an employee purchase framework. Tasha and Luis formed a company together and spent 3 weeks arguing over its name before choosing something so plain, Nora accused them of wasting the opportunity. The agreement was not signed immediately. There were valuations, financing terms, insurance requirements, and a schedule tied to the garden center's actual earnings. It felt less like giving away a legacy than teaching it to stand without her. When Nora told the children she planned to sell the Western Strip, Melissa's first question was whether she had chosen a broker. Yes. The silence lasted long enough for Nora to hear Melissa's office printer in the background. You listed it already? I signed yesterday. With someone from Dayton? With a commercial broker who handles small industrial parcels. I handle land, I know. No, apparently you don't. Nora closed her eyes. We discussed this. You announced a decision. That isn't discussion. The property is not a family vote. I'm not asking for a vote. I'm asking why you would pay a stranger when your daughter could do the work. Because if the deal becomes difficult, I need to be able to fire the broker without damaging Christmas. Melissa laughed once, bitterly. Do you expect Christmas? Not every decision is abandonment. It is when you make it that way. Melissa hung up. For 3 weeks, she did not call. Paige lasted 2 Tuesdays after the kitchen confrontation. The first call was stiff. The second became an argument when Nora said she did not want Graham joining them to collect the turntable. "He can carry it," Paige said. "Eric can help." "Why don't you want to meet him?" "I do. Not while your father's things are being divided. You've already met Tasha and Luis's entire lives." That sentence makes no sense. It makes sense to me. Paige arrived alone, packed the turntable and records into her car, and cried when she found Ray's handwriting inside a Johnny Cash album. "Paige, this one is mine. Ask first." "He knew I'd take it," she said. "He knew you'd return it scratched. I was 20. You were 32. Paige laughed through her tears, then hugged Nora beside the open trunk. For a moment, it felt possible that hurt had become porous. Then Paige said, "I don't know how to be around you without getting something wrong. Come anyway. I need a little distance." Nora could have called it punishment. She let Paige choose her own word. The estate closed. Melissa collected the sewing cabinet with a rented cargo van and refused Nora's help, wrapping it until one drawer slid open and spilled yellowed thread across the hall. They knelt together, winding loose strands around wooden spools. "Grandma taught me blanket stitch right there," Melissa said. "You stabbed yourself and bled on the fabric. You told me not to tell her. She would have boiled the needle." Melissa smiled, then looked at the cabinet. "I thought this would feel different." "How?" "Like Dad gave it to me." "He did." "No, I mean like he was still involved." Nora touched one brass drawer pull. "Objects aren't very good at being people." Melissa looked at her. "Neither are flowers." Nora met her eyes. "I should have called," Melissa said. "Yes, I did ask Jenna to choose the lilies because I was in a closing. They were beautiful. You hated them. They smelled like death." Melissa laughed so suddenly that she sat back on her heels. After loading the cabinet, she asked about the land listing. Nora braced herself. "Any offers?" "One low one." "Did your broker tell you the drainage easement will scare buyers who haven't dealt with county parcels?" "No." She should have. The old edge entered Melissa's voice. Nora heard it, and this time, Melissa heard it too. "I'm doing it again," she said. "Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you." Melissa called 4 days later to complain about the mounted fish, which had reappeared in another listing after the sellers moved. She did not mention land, probate, money, or Nora's plans. Nora noticed every absence. The Western Acres sold in October to a regional plumbing supplier that wanted a small warehouse and outdoor storage. The price was slightly below appraisal after drainage work, slightly above the amount Nora had decided she could accept. The proceeds cleared the old business debt and funded the cottage renovation with enough left for a reserve. Luis replaced the roof before winter. Tasha chose kitchen cabinets after Nora rejected 3 samples. "They're cabinets," Tasha said. "They're where I'll live." "You spent 37 years ordering plants by photograph. Plants grow. Cabinets also change. They become dirty." Diane helped Nora sort the house. She treated every box as a chance to insult the contents. "Why do you own 19 serving platters?" "Wedding gifts. You've been married once?" People were optimistic. Eric came most Sundays. He took the red tool chest only after Luis removed 2 torquey wrenches and a voltage tester belonging to Bells. Eric brought the green work light he had given Nora and attached it beneath the cottage sink while repairing a loose fitting. "Useful gift," he said. "Don't become smug. I'm practicing for old age." By January, the employee purchase agreement was signed. Tasha and Luis began buying a small share of Bells from each quarter's earnings. Nora retained the majority interest, her salary, and final authority during the transition. They celebrated with grocery store cake in the break room. "You could have bought something better," Nora said. "We're owners now," Tasha replied. "We're controlling costs." Nora moved into the cottage in February. The first night, rain tapped the new roof. The rooms were small enough that she could hear the refrigerator from the bedroom, but the sound no longer traveled through a whole empty house to reach her. Ray's brown glasses sat on the bedside table. The green travel mug stood in the kitchen cabinet beside the pickle jar Tasha had never requested back. Nora woke before dawn and walked to the greenhouse in slippers and a winter coat. The roofs glowed faintly beneath the security lights. Inside, the air smelled of damp soil and new growth. On the back bench, the season's first red salvia had arrived. Nora touched one leaf. It was cool, tender, and entirely itself. Behind her, the greenhouse door opened. Tasha entered carrying a clipboard. You know the anniversary is tomorrow. Nora did not ask which anniversary. I know. We can cover the class. No. You don't have to prove anything. Nora looked across the rows of plants waiting for spring. I'm not proving it, she said. I'm doing it. Tasha studied her for another moment. All right, she said. But if you become noble, I'm sending you home. I have never been noble. Good. Put on real shoes. Nora returned to the cottage and changed. The walk took less than 2 minutes. That was one reason she had chosen the place, though she had told everyone it was about reducing expenses. She liked crossing from home to work without entering a car. She liked seeing the greenhouse lights from her kitchen window. She liked knowing the building was occupied at night, not abandoned until morning. She disliked that Ray would have liked it too. The class roster held 24 names for 20 chairs. Tasha had written, "Bring 4 more" in the margin and underlined it twice. Propagation? Nora asked. People like free plants. Cuttings are not free. They require time, soil, pots, water, light, and attention. So do most things people call free. Luis carried folding chairs from storage while complaining that the legs were bent. Nora arranged trays of potting mix, pruning snips, rooting powder, and small plastic pots. On the greenhouse floor near the third aisle, the concrete changed color slightly. The patch was almost impossible to notice unless a person knew where to look. Nora knew. She stood there with a tray in her hands, remembering Ray's untied boot and the mister shining water across petunia sleeves. The memory came whole, not softened by time. For 1 second, the air felt too warm. Nora? Luis had stopped with 2 chairs beneath each arm. I'm fine. He waited. She set down the tray. That word has caused enough trouble. Yes. I need a minute. Luis nodded and moved away without offering comfort she would have to manage. Nora went outside. Winter still held the ground, though the light had begun to change. Along the county road, the front beds were bare except for short brown stalks left standing for birds. The western field beyond the drainage ditch no longer belonged to Bells. Survey flags marked the future warehouse, and a gravel entrance had been cut from the road. The loss of land did not feel like amputation. It felt like a belt loosened 1 notch. Her phone buzzed in her coat pocket. Paige had left a voice message at 6:13 that morning. Nora pressed play. Hi, Mom. I know what tomorrow is, or today when you hear this. I've been staring at the clock trying to decide whether calling early is thoughtful or alarming. Probably alarming. Paige paused. Nora heard a faucet running in the background. I don't know what to say about Dad. Everything I think of sounds like something printed inside a card. I miss him. I miss you too. I know those aren't the same thing, and I know saying I miss you isn't the same as showing up. Another pause. I'm not asking you to call back. I just didn't want today to pass without you hearing my voice. The message ended. Nora listened again. Then she called Paige. Hi, Paige answered cautiously. You were right. 6:13 is alarming. Paige let out a breath. I knew it. Are you all right? Yes. Are you? No. Okay. Nora looked through the greenhouse wall at Tasha arranging pots. I have a class today. I remember. Propagation. You read the Garden Center newsletter? It arrives twice a month. Tasha uses exclamation points aggressively. That is not her only crime. Paige laughed. The sound caught on something and became a sniff. I wish I was there, she said. Nora waited to see whether the sentence wanted anything from her. Come another time, she said. Would that be okay? Yes, I might bring Graham. Not to collect an appliance. No, just to meet you. Then bring him. They did not repair everything in that call. Paige did not apologize again, and Nora did not demand a schedule. They talked about the turntable, which worked after Graham replaced a belt. Paige had listened to Ray's Johnny Cash album and found one of his hardware store receipts tucked inside the sleeve. He bought deck screws and drain cleaner, Paige said. A reckless afternoon. I kept the receipt. Of course you did. When they hung up, Nora stood outside until the cold reached through her coat. The anniversary morning began with customers arriving before the doors opened. Some came for the class. Others had been lured by a brief stretch of sun into believing spring had begun. Tasha unlocked the entrance at 8:30. A woman immediately asked whether it was safe to plant tomatoes. No, Nora told her. What if I cover them? No. Your neighbor bought tomatoes twice last year. The woman looked impressed. You remember me? I remember optimism. She bought seeds instead. By 9, every chair was occupied. 4 people stood at the back, and the boxwood man had brought his own stool. Beverly sat in the front row with a notebook and corrected another attendee's definition of a node before Nora began. Today we're making more plants, Nora said. Free plants, Tasha added from the register. Nora looked toward her. Management will be disciplined later. The class laughed. Nora lifted a coleus stem and showed where to make the cut. Not too close to the node. Remove the lower leaves. Do not leave so much foliage that the cutting exhausted itself trying to support what its roots could not yet sustain. What happens if it wilts? Someone asked. It may recover. How do you know? You wait, and if it doesn't, you try again. The answer entered the air and stayed there. Nora moved among the chairs, checking hands, correcting cuts, and stopping Beverly from dipping the entire stem into rooting powder. Nobody mentioned Ray until a man near the back raised his hand. Didn't your husband used to teach this? He answered questions, Nora said. I remember him showing me how to divide hostas. He enjoyed hostas because they survived his methods. A few longtime customers smiled. The man looked embarrassed. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring up. You brought up my husband. He was here a long time. It would be strange if nobody did. She returned to the demonstration table. Ray liked to say every cutting needed a generous amount of rooting powder. Ray was wrong. Shake off the excess. This time, the laughter included her. Halfway through the class, Eric appeared carrying a brown paper bag and a cardboard tray of coffee. He took the empty chair near the door and watched without interrupting. When Nora finished, the participants carried their small pots to a bench marked class projects. They would leave the cuttings at Bell's for 3 weeks where temperature and moisture could be controlled, then return for whatever had rooted. You're making them come back, Eric said when the last person moved toward the register. It's horticulture, not manipulation. Sounds like both. He held up the bag. Lunch, you came prepared. You forget to eat when people ask questions. I ate breakfast. What? Coffee, that's a beverage. Your concern is becoming repetitive. Tasha leaned over the register. She also ate half a piece of toast. Nora looked at her. How would you know? You left it beside the sink in the cottage. You were in my house? You asked me to check the cabinet measurement. Yesterday. I'm thorough. Eric unpacked turkey sandwiches, chips, and 2 oatmeal cookies on the office desk. He handed Nora a sandwich with mustard and no cheese. They ate beneath the photograph of Bell's first greenhouse, a warped little structure Ray had built from used lumber. Nora was in the photograph too, 33 years younger, holding a hammer and glaring at whoever took the picture. Eric pointed to her. You look mad. Your father installed the door backward. Can a door be backward? That one could. I don't remember the old greenhouse. You were at college. He nodded. Right. For once, the memory did not become a debt between them. It was simply something Nora had, and Eric did not. He wiped crumbs from his jeans. I went by the house. Why? Checking the heat. I turned it down, not off. I know. Nora waited. It feels weird empty, he said. Yes. You going to sell this spring? If the market is decent. Melissa could. He stopped himself. Nora raised an eyebrow. I was going to say Melissa could become unbearable. She has relevant experience. He smiled. Are you going to use her? No. Probably smart. I may ask her opinion on the listing price. Eric's surprise was almost comical. Do not tell her, Nora said. I want 48 hours before she sends a comparative analysis. Agreed. Tasha knocked once and entered without waiting. There's somebody asking for you. Who? Tasha's expression was neutral in a way that required effort. Melissa stood near the front counter, holding a dented stainless steel thermos. She wore jeans, flat boots, and a red wool coat Nora had never seen. No leather folder, no flowers. I found this in the garage cabinet when we moved Grandma's sewing table, she said. Nora took the thermos. Ray had carried it to the garden center during their first winters, before they could afford reliable heat in the office. The metal was scratched and the bottom dented from the morning he left it on the truck bumper and drove away. Its old red plastic cap had cracked years ago. Now it had a new black cap. The bent handle lay flat again. Someone had cleaned the coffee stains from the steel without polishing away the scratches. Where did you find a cap? Nora asked. Online, it took 3 tries. Apparently, Thermos people are intense. There are Thermos people, there are people for everything. Nora unscrewed the cap. The inside smelled faintly of coffee. I filled it, Melissa said. The way you like it. You don't know how I like coffee. No sugar, a little milk. Dad used too much milk and pretended he didn't. Nora looked at her daughter. I remember you sharing it with him, Melissa said. You'd pour yours into the cap because he forgot to bring 2 cups. That was before we had heat. I know. Melissa glanced toward the greenhouse floor. I wasn't sure whether to come. Neither was I. I can leave. You can stay. Melissa nodded. Tasha and Luis had closed the register, though it was still 20 minutes before closing time. Tasha turned the sign to closed, while Luis moved the remaining customers toward the side exit with discounts on whatever they were holding. You don't have to close early, Nora said. Owner decision, Tasha replied. You own 3%. An influential 3. They carried chairs into the greenhouse and sat among the class trays. Eric brought the sandwiches. Melissa poured coffee from the thermos into its new cap and handed it to Nora. The coffee had too much milk. Nora drank it anyway. They talked about Ray, though not continuously and not correctly. Eric insisted Ray once repaired a mower using a fork. Melissa said it was a butter knife. Luis remembered both tools and claimed neither repair worked. Tasha told them Ray had secretly watered her orchids after criticizing them for being dramatic. Paige called while they were arguing. Nora put her on speaker, and Paige supplied a story about Ray mailing her a box containing 1 shoe because she had left the pair at home, and postage was, in his words, robbery. Outside, the late winter light faded beyond the greenhouse walls. Nora had expected the anniversary to hollow her out. It had. The difference was that the empty place was not the only thing inside her. On the bench nearby, 28 fresh cuttings stood in damp soil. Some would root, some would not. Nobody in the greenhouse pretended attention could guarantee an outcome. Tasha leaned back in her chair. Luis poured himself more coffee. Eric reached for the last oatmeal cookie, and Melissa slapped his hand away so she could divide it. Nora sat among the people who had chosen, in different ways and with different failures, to come. Ray's thermos warmed both her hands. Her phone rested silent on the table. For once, she was not waiting for it to ring.